And as we do, we will start with the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag
United States of America,
and
to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right, next up then is roll call, please, Karen.
Doug,
Here.
Karen,
Here.
John,
Here.
Gary,
Here.
Mike.
Here. All right, so at this point, we typically have a motion to approve tonight's agenda. There is new information that's been made available to the council since our last council meeting. Specifically, a set of recommendations from P&Z on September 7th. And from that meeting, they have forwarded recommendations to us to approve several of the requests for rezoning, but also recommended that we do not approve the Water's Edge PUD. And in their letter, they recommend not approve the plan and recommend City Council submit an application in accordance with the City of Peosta's planned unit development zoning ordinance. So in that discussion, it became apparent that there may be some things in that what's been done to date that aren't necessarily fully aligned with our description of how that process should go. So before we approve tonight's agenda, I simply wanted to ask the council if anybody wanted to motion to delay the public hearing on the PUD until such time that the council has had an opportunity to go back and make sure that we have in fact followed all of the ordinance steps as they're outlined. If we do choose to do so, that since they are based on the PUD, the public hearing for the mini store and Mary Call property would also be deferred at the same time.
I think it makes sense to push back the PUD, make sure we've got our ducks in a row. I think that it also makes sense for the mini storage since it is not in alignment with the PUD. I don't think it makes sense to push back the Mary Kolb because all said and done, it's in line with the PUD.
Is there, what does it hurt to do the hearing on the PUD tonight?
There's, to the best of my knowledge, there's no harm to it. If the PUD, as we go back and review it, if the PUD does in fact change, we need to repeat the public hearing.
You just have to duplicate the public hearing. I think we just go with it the way it is. That's-
Say that louder, please.
I think we just go with the agenda the way it's been published.
Anything else from the rest of the council?
I agree with Jerry.
Well, I'm not hearing a motion to vote on. All right, then with no motion to amend the agenda, I'll take a motion to approve the agenda.
To approve the agenda.
Second. Doug, aye.
Can I?
Jerry, aye.
Mike, aye.
Motion carries with 5. All right, next up then is the citizen comment. And to be clear, there's 2 citizen comment sections in the agenda. The first one is for non-public hearing items, because obviously the public hearing has an opportunity to speak. So any items appearing on the agenda for tonight, if there's an interest in addressing the council for items not on the agenda, then that's at the end of the meeting. So at this point, is there anybody who would like to address the council for items appearing on tonight's agenda other than the public hearings? Yes.
Gary Bird, 7815 Birds Road. One of your items on the that the planning and zoning handed down to you was a motion, and it's on your agenda tonight. And according to the way it's printed out here, it says that after discussing, the planning and zoning voted not to approve the plan and recommends the city's council submit an application in accordance with the city's Peosta Plan Unit Development Zoning Ordinance. That is not the motion that was made that night at the P&Z. If you go to minute 52.48, listen to the audio. The audio says, motion, the city has to revisit the plan, plus I believe that Barry Call should be involved and the Birds family should be involved and get this on the right track. That was the motion. Somehow it got changed. And I
Okay,
don't appreciate that.
thank you. And I don't think that fundamentally changes what we're doing, does it? I appreciate that there's a difference in the wording.
Oh, what is even closer? One says, the city council submit an application according to the city planned unit development, and it doesn't say anything about revisiting the plan. Well, maybe that is to submit a application for, but it doesn't have any of the other verbiage that the motion maker made.
Okay. Understand. I don't know what else to say to that other than,
Why do we allow that? I mean, that's, the audio is right there.
okay,
Why are we allowing that?
I can't answer that as I sit here, Gary. I haven't listened to that audio. We can certainly take that as a follow-up action.
Okay.
And that's just a public hearing, correct? No action on it.
Correct, on the PUD, correct.
So it's just to open a public hearing for tonight, so it's just so you guys can give your input and everything. We're not gonna take any action on it. So.
Any other comments for agenda items? And I'm not seeing any on mine either. Okay.
Gary Bird 78. Was the agenda change? From the original posted agenda, was that changed to the current agenda that's on the website today?
So we are required to post the agenda and it needs to be static from 6 o'clock on Monday. So 24 hours prior to the meeting. As a courtesy, we do typically put it out earlier and it is subject to change up until 6 o'clock on Monday.
Okay.
And I realized that it did this time and it may have caused some confusion. That is an unfortunate and unintended side effect of us doing exactly what I believe it was you that you suggested in P and Z, is that we take a closer look at how we got to this point, but that we need to make sure we're doing things properly. Anything else? All right, and next up is the consent agenda. We could take a motion to approve the consent agenda.
I'll make a motion for consent agenda.
I'll second.
Karen, I.
Carry aye.
Okay.
Motion carries with 5. Then we're into the public hearing section here. So before we start in, there's a series of these public hearings on the agenda, 5 of them to be specific. So we've got a lot of people here and I'm thrilled to see that. So thank you everybody for coming. I do have a couple of things I just want to be clear about as far as expectations as we get into the public. First, everything we say, either direction, and everything that is said tonight ought to be said with mutual respect. When you are invited to the podium, please come to the podium. Start, as Gary did, with your name and address. Clearly enough that Aaron over here can hear it. And then I'll ask you to first start by clearly stating your position on the hearing, whether you are supporting or opposing what the topic in front of us. And then what's really helpful is if you can articulate succinctly why you feel that way. And then once you're done, please give it just a minute. There may be follow-up questions from the council. And a couple other, when you are speaking, please do your best to speak just to the topic at hand. And I will assure everybody what we're looking for here is other points of view. We're not looking for quantities of other points of view. So there is no value in trying and repeating the same comment over and over. If somebody has already said your perspective on that, it doesn't need to be repeated multiple times. We don't need to have a vote. This is just opening up so we can hear the perspectives from the community. Any questions? And we'll move on to the first public hearing, lot 1-1, Royal Oak East, 4th edition. We'll open the public hearing. Would anybody like to address the council for Royal Oaks East, 4th edition? Nobody in the room? Anybody online? Hearing none, I will close the public hearing on the,
I do have something.
Oh,
I have to add to it. Deputy John, on my second record money. I'm just wondering if that follows the future land use map comprehensive plan.
do we know the answer to that as we sit here?
Yes, it does. Yeah, or the future land use map, I think that area shows central activity district. Talking, well. Yes. For your future land use, you adopted on May 25th. Shows it's in the central activity district. I
Right.
don't know what it actually shows in the comp plan because there's a couple different versions out there.
So,
But I'm asking the question, do you know?
so what happened was, if I'm not mistaken, is as those plans are being drawn, the exact same time we're finalizing the comp plan. And they both basically hit our desks about the same time. So we're making an adjustment or a compromise to move that road, connecting road over, up north.
So you're compromising the comprehensive plan?
Because of the timing of everything on that in particular piece of land. Is that correct? Right?
Yep.
Okay.
But it still fits what we had planned for that area.
Yes, it's
It's
still,
just, it's not exactly, right? So the comp plan is the way we all kind of understand is a 10,000.
I understand that.
Yep.
Thank you.
Any other comments, public comments for lot 1-1 Royal Oaks East, 4th edition? All right, hearing none, I will close the public hearing, and that takes us then to the ordinance amending the zoning map for Royal Oaks East, 4th edition.
I'll make a motion. So questions to accept the Royal Oaks East 4th edition.
I'll second.
Karen, I.
John,
Mike, aye.
Motion carries with 5. Next up then is the public hearing for Birds Green Acres annexed lots. I will open the public hearing. Invite members of the public to approach the podium.
That's done a nice study record lane. This is being addressed, this public hearing is being addressed because I caught something on an updated June zoning map that identified everything as ag land. Our old city administrator didn't do her job. And that's why we're all here tonight, because of something that wasn't completed. And some people are very stressed out, can't sleep at night. So if you really think about how this was really led down, I'm the one who caught it.
So Deb, if I may respectfully, the hearing is whether you support or don't support
I do.
the rezoning
support
of
it.
these.
I do support.
And then if you have a
rationale.
rationale why, we would appreciate hearing that.
We have a guy that's building a house who is not in conformance with the city code. So we gotta get him back into his right.
Thank you. Any other comments from the public regarding Birch Green Acres annex lots? Online? Hearing none, I will close the public hearing on Birch Green Acres annex lots. Moving us to the ordinance amending the zoning map for Birch Green Acres annex lots.
Make the motion to amend the zoning map for Birch Green Acres annex lots.
A second.
Day aye.
Karen, I.
John, I.
Gary, aye.
Mike, aye.
Motion carries with 5. Next, we've got the public hearing for the Water's Edge Planned Unit Development. And before we open it up for in the room public comment, I've got 3 letters the city received regarding this item that I will read. Fortunately, they're short. So the first one is from Mary Ann Kolb. I'm Mary Ann Kolb, located at 17512 Birds Road. Am giving notice to inform you that I object to putting my property in the planned unit development. My land is legally described as Lat 2-2 of the southeast corner of the northwest in the city of Peosta. Parcel number 141010000. I certainly do not agree with how the city handled this PUD plan or the zoning of all properties without consideration of all owners' input. Second letter is from Gary Birds, Terry Birds, and Deb McDonough. It says, Dear Peosta City Council members, this notice is to inform you of the Birds Family Investments Limited Partnership's objection to the rezoning of our property into a planned unit development. Our property is legally described as Lot 1 of E&H Birds Place in the city. We do not agree with this PUD plan or the zoning restrictions you are attempting to implement on our property. We, as the property owners, do not want this type of zoning imposed on us. Imposed upon us. The third and final letter that I've got is from Deb McDonough, doing business as Peosta Mini Storage. Dear City Council members, I, Deb McDonough, doing business as Peosta Mini Storage, am hereby informing the City Council that I object to the rezoning of my property that you are attempting to rezone through this planned unit development plan. For these reasons, I object. You are attempting to uproot my business that has been in place for 25 years, stopping me from expanding my business. It will be a cost to the taxpayers to move my business. The city does not own the property. You are damaging the value of my property and business. You have no one to develop the plan that you are trying to implement. You had no communication with me or any of the property owners before approving RDG's February 7th, 2021 agreement of $123,658 at the February 23rd council meeting, and foremost interfering with my livelihood and main source of income. I, as the property owner, do not want this type of zoning imposed upon me, and I strongly do not agree with this PUD plan or the zoning on all properties without the landowner's involvement and consideration. So with those 3 being heard, sorry, I should have opened the public hearing first. So I will open the public hearing at this point for any members of the public in the room who would like to address the council regarding the Water's Edge planned unit development.
I'm a Birch, 7815 Birch Road, and I oppose the development for the main reason is that there is nothing in that considered as a park for the kids to do. I went and called West Dubuque, and West Dubuque has 380 kids from K to 5. Speaking from K to 5, they have 245, so that's a total of 625 from K to 5. Now, if you would take 6 to 12th grade, I would think the average would be about the same or a little less. You're talking 1,000 kids here in town. They need soccer fields, they need ball diamonds, they need something to do. You put 1,000 kids out in the street, you're gonna have crime. I think we owe it to our kids and grandkids. I take my grandkids down for soccer practice, and there's kids on the field playing, and there's another set of kids waiting to get on the field. When I go back to pick them up, it's the same thing. There's no place for these kids to go. If they want to play soccer, they have to go to either Dyersville or Dubuque. At a town this size, there should be soccer fields. So I'm asking you to go ahead and relook at the plan, try to work with all the parties involved to have harmony and success in this community. We're all in this together. Isn't that what we want? Don't we want a successful town?
Donna, if I may, please. The first thing I think I heard, well, first of all, I didn't catch your last name.
First,
Okay, thank you. Your first comment or the rationale was that there's no park in it.
well, no, there's a park, but there's nothing for these kids to do. They need group activities, one for social development and also for athletic development. When you have that many kids in town, you have to have group activities.
Okay. Any other questions from the council for Donna? Thanks. All right. Thank you. Anybody else?
Dennis Birds, 17287 Rock Road, Monticello. I want to know who won the lottery.
Could you please
I mean,
start
this
by saying,
plan that you got drawing up, it's awesome. You bought into a nice coloring book. I mean, looks great. The only problem I have, on property owners. So, and with that pond, it's gonna be over $1 million for that pond. And this, I don't know about that, just speculating $50,000 an acre, times 8, you got close to $500,000 that comes out of it. Then I wanna know if they're gonna run a fire hydrant to it to keep it full. You guys look into that? You have engineers on it?
yes,
And how they gonna keep it full?
we've got engineers that do lake and pond design. They're looking at the watershed. And the calculations have shown that this will work where it's at.
And who's gonna pay for this? The taxpayers, who's gonna afford to live in Peosta here?
So
I think that's something that's interesting about this development that is lost. I agree with you. It's gonna be on the surface, it looks to be expensive. I'm not gonna disagree with you. But as it's developed and as it's drawn, it very well could have up to, if I think the number is correct, $100 million of taxable value that we're gonna be able to tap into when it's all said.
Like I say, I'm glad I don't live in Peosta.
since you do bring up the funding point, Dennis, I will just, for the good of the audience tonight, point out that there are many funding sources for projects like this beyond taxpayer money. There's, and especially in today's age, there's a tremendous amount of money being thrown out by or offered by other government entities, whether it be federal, state, or county. And the opportunity is easily there for the vast majority of this investment that the city would make into making this a reality, to be paid with funds that come from outside of.
Oh, one more point.
Sure.
Whose name do I give to the first person that drowns in that pond that's gonna be liable for it?
So we will stick to the items of the agenda here. That's not relevant to this. Anybody else care to speak to the council regarding Water's Edge?
Jerry Birds, 10775 Fair Road. I am one of the owners, one of the 7 owners, and I just want to set the record straight that this property is not for sale. You heard things get thrown out about we're getting offers from other property owners. We're like the council. I have 7 brothers and sisters, and we all have a vote. And we have all voted unanimously not to sell the property for X amount of time. So whatever you may think you want to do will still have to go through us. And so that's my comment. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Burns.
I just wanted to make a statement. I mean, we've been. My name's Mary Paul, I come to 75 years old. And it's not that the landowners are not wanting to have and ponds, or not ponds, but trails and parks. But my question was, how many units of housing are you talking about? When I look at that page 40 of that PUD, my house isn't on there anymore. And there's 16 houses within from this, and I know this is all conceptual, I've heard this story before, but from the school parking lot entrance or exit to the corner of Burns Road, down to about where the creek is, out in Lane. There's 16 units there, plus 2 that are multifamily. Like, how many units are you planning on putting into this little area? And nobody seems to know that, but whatever.
So to address your question, you prefaced it properly. This is the PUD, so well, I guess there's 2 items here to address. Regarding the PUD, I will answer that question. It is conceptual. It's not appropriate to look at a PUD and count buildings. It's trying to illustrate what an eventual manifestation of this might look like. It is not intended to specify what would be used to the individual lot lines.
Or
So,
to take out people's businesses, right? It's not, that's a concept.
So the other point that's probably more relevant to discussion right now is tonight's discussion is around the comprehensive plan. The PUD is not part of the comprehensive plan.
I just read that. What did I read? Did I not read?
Oh, sorry. I said that backwards. Sorry, I apologize. I said that wrong.
I guess my other point is, I've been there for 50 years and I've done residential. I really want to be back in the zoning. And my other problem is I do not want to be in the PUD because it puts a lot of stipulations on my property. And plus like I said, on page 40, I'm not there. And I'm hoping I'm gonna be there for a while, and if I'm not, my kids are gonna be there, so. You know, I know we talked about this last night, that possibly we could take some of us out of that. Why not move it down a little further? Plus the fact that, you know, I know that you guys have talked to the DNR and FEMA about the floodplain, and then the drainage into it's gonna be all runoff that's gonna fill that pond. Well, I'll tell you, in a dry year, you don't get a lot of runoff. This year has been dry, you know, a lot of ponds have been. But, you know, and like I said, it's not like the property owners are against progress. We want parks and we want green spaces. And we want restaurants and we want the town. I mean, it's not like we're against that, but the way it was done, plus the fact that, and I know we have to do section, but you can move in and take whatever, make us do whatever you want. But I don't think that's really fair, and I don't think that's a Peosta thing for me, but that's just my.
If I may address that, there has been no talk of taking property against somebody's will.
Not taking it, but you're going to put me in limbo if I'm in that PUD. Right now, I'm in limbo with my zoning. I've been in residential for over 50 years. And I've been waiting around for this residential thing to come through for how long?
So the purpose of the public hearing we have tonight is to get the feedback like this. If it hasn't already come out, this is like the safety net to catch that. So by addressing the council tonight and making it clear that you as one of the property owners in this would like to stay as R1 residential,
Right.
this is the right opportunity now for the council to come back and direct staff to figure out how we take that parcel and make it R1.
And
Right.
Yes, right. And plus the fact that in my annexation that was supposed to be beneficial for me, was supposed to have a water stop to my land, which I didn't have to hook up to right away, but because I have a well and a septic. But they didn't bring that over, and I called and asked about that numerous times, and nobody seems to have an answer why it wasn't put to me. And I think it's because of the pending PUD. But or why, but I don't know.
Okay, we can take an action to find out
Mhm.
where that's at.
Yeah. But my phone number is in the phone book in case you have to call me. Because that was one of these things.
Questions?
Yeah, any questions for me? I'm getting old and getting tired of this, and I really don't like coming to meetings.
Eric McDonough.
Thank you.
431 Third Street. I just want to ensure it is recorded that the city council received opposition letters from 3 of the 5 landowners.
I'm sorry, was that a question? Could you please repeat it?
I just want to ensure it is recorded that the city council received opposition letters from 3 of the 5 landowners.
I have 3 letters here that I just read, yes.
So it is recorded, correct?
But yes, multiple times now.
Why is the city council continuing with a plan using land that is not for sale?
So I will do my best to explain that the comprehensive plan and the PUD, if it is approved, which it is not at this point, they aim to set the vision for how the city intends to develop. It does not,
Land is not for sale, you just heard that tonight.
it does
Why
not,
are you moving forward with something?
may I finish? It does not assume that the city buys the property and develops the property. There's a lot of development that has happened in this town that has never been in the land has never been in the city's hands. Individual people own land, individual people sell land, developers buy land, and they develop land. All the city is doing is putting a zoning ordinance out there that says these are the restrictions on how it can be developed.
Isn't that a waste of taxpayers' money?
No.
Any questions for Mr. McDonough? Anybody else care to address the council?
Joe Callahan, 7629 Commerce Park. Sorry, I didn't come very prepared for this. I didn't even know this meeting existed. So 2 hours. I own 10 acres of this 95 acres. Not a letter, not a phone call, nothing. And I get rezoned. Now, I'm for the PUD. Because 2 years ago, I applied for PUD on the 10 acres that I own. And I met with staff and council and you, Jim, you know, and we had, you know, we talked about negotiations. When I first came in here, I was looking to do apartments in 55 and older. You know, and you know, we had a big turnout, understood that there was huge traffic problems, totally understood. You know, probably brought up a lot of points that people weren't thinking about. The importance of this infrastructure and streets that need to be maybe caught up before the development's done. And even through this whole process, you know, I was, you know, the city was, you know, upfront with me saying, you know, we're not after the apartments. We don't mind your 55 and older, but we don't want your apartments. Can you work out something down south? You know, on the 40 acres south, which was fine, and that's what we did. But the land use map kept coming out. And my 55 and years and older weren't on it. You know, and I've tried to set up where to have the land use map changed, and I was told no. So far, I had no say-so of what goes on my 10 acres at all. Not even feedback. What if you told me I could do it, but then I tried to get it changed on the land use map before it was adopted, and they told me no.
Who told you no?
Jim did.
You'll have to refresh my memory on that.
When we had our meeting, correct me if I'm wrong, we had our meeting, and I said that everybody, council, Doug, RDG, had no problem with my 55 and older up on my 10 acres. In fact, it was a good fit, and I do believe it's a good fit. But when I asked to have the land use map changed, to show it, that way we're not out of conformance. The first thing that's built on the 95 acres. And you had called Jim, you called me back and said they weren't gonna do it.
So, Mr. Callahan, I'm looking at the future land use map as it was approved on May 25th. And the land, I'm doing a little generalizing by eye, but I believe the land is designated in the future land use map as a central activity district.
Then what does that mean?
That is part of, between that and the parks, that is what will eventually be delineated by PUD.
So is the 55 and older allowed there or not?
The PUD in its current draft form clearly shows that type of housing on your property.
Well, there's a few different versions of this. It depends on what page you get to. Some show apartment buildings, some show housing. And it's like, I don't even know, and I'm the owner, and I'm not even explaining what it is or isn't.
So obviously, things are going to change. It's in development. And as we have numerous meetings with landowners, yes, we do. As we have numerous meetings with the public, we have open houses, we have public hearings. It's going to continue to change. So yes, you're going to find multiple versions out there. If you look at printed copies, I can't tell you what version that is or where it came from. The point is, it's in development and we're having these kinds of conversations to get the input so we can continue to refine it before the council takes official action. Nobody's pushing this in its current form. We're asking for input. And in your specific case, you started by saying you support this, but your statements afterwards seem to say you don't. I'm a little confused.
Well, okay, let me break it down. So I came in for PUD, and at that time, it was suggested that we table or withdraw it. I don't remember which we did, which was fine. And yes, we did have some communication. And as the land use map was growing and my input was being presented, it was never put on there. It's like I didn't have a say so.
Are you hearing what I'm saying? What you asked for is in the comprehensive plan.
Is there 55 and older allowed in the comprehensive plan on my piece? That's a simple yes or no.
That answer is not yet defined because we don't have the PUD.
What? So, but the PUD is one thing. The PUD is a zoning that allows everything. Everything. Okay? The land use map that you're going to use guides you on where you're going to put what.
So the land.
So the land use map is more important than the PUD.
I would agree with that statement. The land use map is the basis that P&Z is supposed to use or is expected to use when setting zoning. Correct?
Correct.
Okay, we agree on that point. So knowing that we've got the comprehensive plan and we've got, as part of the comprehensive plan development process, we evolved into or identified this land as being an ideal place for essential development. So we started a PUD specifically. So right now, as the land has been annexed, it's an Ag 1, right?
Correct.
And by our ordinance, that's what it comes in as without any other written pre-agreement.
Correct.
So it is in his ag, and from the very beginning of our conversation, other landowner in here that's saying we haven't had these conversations. I have been very open that we're going to do a housing study. We're going to do a comprehensive plan. We're going to develop, let's see, I've got the exact words here. As such, we need to refine our plan so we can confidently support future development. This refinement is expected to include a housing study, a parks plan, both of which will feed into a revised comprehensive plan. This comprehensive plan will provide the necessary guidance to confidently set zoning for any annexed property.
Is the housing study completed?
Yes.
Is the land use map complete?
Yes.
And I'm still standing here having this conversation.
Yes, we are in transition.
Okay, now I'm going to back up a little bit. Okay, I'm 100% what the city's trying to do. And what I'm going to stand here and say is, if you don't work with us better, this whole thing's going to be derailed.
So can I address that, please?
Yeah.
I have this letter I just read from, it wasn't from a conversation directly with you, but it was at the same time you and I were having conversations. This is from a conversation on February 22nd, 2020, specifically with Mr. Gary Birds. when we outlined at that point what the intent was of the city for this. So I'm getting a little tired of hearing these allegations that we're not talking to landowners. This is February 22nd, 2020.
You
We have that
talk-
conversation.
You talk to us, but you're not listening.
Joel, let me- Yes, there was talk and there was listen. And then the very next one I've got documented here was the comprehensive plan public rollout, July 30th, 2020. That was talk and listen. Then we go to March 25th, 2021, the Water's Edge kickoff meeting. Talk and listen. April 27th, 2021, Water's Edge landowner meeting, specifically with the landowners to talk about what we've got so far and to get input on where that's going. May 25th, 2021, Water's Edge progress update with the landowners. So we can show here's what we've done, latest input we've gotten from the landowners and get additional feedback. And then July 20th, 2020, we had the Peosta open house and the ice cream soda, where we once again put all this latest development on display, and then actually had survey forms and encouraged people to give us even more feedback, whether it be written and posted notes on the boards, written in survey forms, or directly talk to us. So I do not accept your claim that we're not listening.
Well, you're not listening, you know, if just like this zoning, this PUD zoning, I never got nothing in the mail. Got a phone call, nothing.
There is no obligation for the city to talk to to send specific notices to individual landowners.
Landowner?
Consider this, the comprehensive
You
plan.
notified you notified the 4 residentials that you're changing, you know, and they didn't even send me something.
The comprehensive plan affects the entire city. So if what you're saying was the rule, we would have to send a letter to every resident in town saying we're going to. So the way we do that is we post it.
I'm talking zoning here. Land use map's different. I'm talking.
It drives the zoning.
You, without even notifying me that you're changing my zoning to PUD, without even telling me.
Joe, I disagree.
Well, where's the letter at? Did I get a letter? You didn't, no, you didn't. I got the 3 residentials, but I did not get nothing from mine.
It was mailed.
Back up a little bit. What I'm trying to say here, my argument was just like it was, okay? I'm saying that you guys are not doing a very good job and you're gonna derail this thing, especially if you can't get the birds on board. I think it's a great idea. I'm for it, but I don't like to be treated like this.
I'm still trying to understand what this is.
Well, it's real simple. A couple weeks ago, I asked to have the land use map adjusted so that it showed my 55 and older, that you told me I would be okay up there. And it would fit into RGD's thing.
When did you ask for that?
I've asked for that from the first time I met you. Hey, I have drawings to the city with it.
And you understand,
And I'm always told, not, they ain't gonna look at it.
so
It
Joel,
ain't gonna fit in their comprehensive plan, so don't waste your time.
you understand, I want to verify that you understand the comprehensive plan shows that land as central activity district, which is being defined by the PUD that is currently in development and we're having the public hearing for right.
So can I ask this, to help clear up stuff, help clear it up, whoever's involved here, can we have the correct land use map? Which one we go by?
It's published on the city website.
There's 5 pages that show 5 different things.
Can you show me a different page in there? I've looked through it. I have only seen one consistent view.
I can get it for it.
2 pages are in Spanish.
Yeah. I don't take it.
So all I'm doing, all I'm doing is saying, I'm a developer, I'm all about it, okay? But I'm also about doing it right. And if you can't get the major part of this thing on board, where's it gonna go? I'm just a side piece on this thing. I really am. But I'm like, I can see it just slipping through the city's hands and how they're handling it.
And that's where all we have done so far, and I mean this sincerely, right? I'm not trying to continue a debate with you. I'm sincerely asking. What we have done so far is a well-established pattern of do some development, get it into the public realm, get feedback. Take that feedback, modify it, get it back out in the public realm. Take that feedback, modify it, put it back out in the public realm. We've done that 6 times. And this is the set, or maybe this is the 6th time. Don't take my count literally, please. But that's the pattern we're in. So somehow between the last one and this one, this has become adversarial. But there's been no action taken on the PUD by this council, nor has there been action even threatened. We continue to make modifications based on it and on the feedback.
So this meeting was not to approve the PUD.
No, it's a public hearing, Joel.
So do you have plans on voting for the PUD?
It's not on our agenda. Act on it.
So when it went through the PUD, what was that?
That was for P and Z to develop their recommendation to the council, which is procedurally the way that needs to go.
The PUD?
Yes,
Okay, so once it leads to planning and zoning, the normal step is to go to council for its action.
for its public hearing.
And no action?
There is,
There was an action in PUD.
there is no, so the PUD action is a recommendation to the council. Right?
To approve the PUD.
And their recommendation in this case was to not approve the PUD. And there is no action on tonight's agenda to approve the PUD. So even if we wanted to, we could not approve the PUD tonight.
Actually, again, the supermajority would take it.
I'm sorry?
Supermajority would take it. You could overrule the PUD.
But they still have to have it on the agenda to do that.
I'm backing up. All I'm saying, and I don't mean to get in your faces about this, but I'm a small piece of this thing and I see this nice, beautiful concept plan that has potential to come together. And the direction that this has been going down is gonna derail.
So please, if you can, be specific, what needs to change beyond the cycle of share, listen, change, share, listen, change?
For my part, it's the smallest piece. Obviously, I sat down, I've asked for things, and I got overlooked. I get that, I understand that, okay? Because I'm a small piece that sits off the corner. But there again, I'm like, well, why am I giving in if I didn't get anything I want? Why don't I just leave it at?
I'm not sure. So my question to you was, what do we need to do differently from the pattern of behavior we've already demonstrated?
But I was told I could put my 55 there. Okay, why can't we show it on the land use map?
Because the land use map needs to show that as being the PUD.
No, the land use map shows where things are going in the PUD. The land use map shows you where things are projected to be in the PUD.
Okay, so if I may ask again, because I really do want to hear the answer. What do you want, how do you want this council and the staff to behave differently? Other than this repetitive cycle that we're still in the middle of getting feedback and making changes? Okay, and from the very beginning.
And a defined 55 and over, not a generic 5-page similar things. That's what I'm asking for, my little piece that I have to this.
Okay, and we're on a path to deliver that.
No, the land use map is approved and it doesn't show it.
It doesn't show 55 specifically, it would not show 55 and over as a specific land use. That's not a zoning district. There is no zoning district that's 55 and over.
Yes, there is, it's PUD. Everything fits in PUD, everything.
And that's what we're in the middle
The
of.
land use map tells you where you can put it.
I'm sorry, I'm not following your logic. And staff, council, anybody?
I think it's communication. We just need to work on being more communication with the landowners and everybody involved. It's basically what it's talking about, right?
Oh, absolutely.
Like the meetings that.
So PUD is zoning. Okay, I'm not an expert at it. PUD is zoning, and if you flip the page open and it says PUD, these are the things that are allowed in PUD. So when you give PUD the 95 acres, we can put everything everywhere on there, except the land use map guides where it goes.
I think I see now.
So if you don't show my 55 and older up there, In fact, there's not even a 55 and older in your entire land use map. Is nobody gonna get to be 55 and older in the city? To me, it should be one of the major points of this whole thing. And I brought that up so many times thinking, what a feather in Peosta's hat to have a 55 and older.
And it aligns very well with the outcome of the housing study as well, Joel, as you and I have talked.
Yeah.
So I think you said something that finally clicked with me, and I'd like to direct it back to the PUD and the Peosta zoning ordinance. In the very first paragraph, the third sentence, the PUD district shall be established by an adopted ordinance setting forth the regulations governing and the location and phase of all proper proposed uses and improvements included in the district. So to be clear, a PUD is not a zoning district like R1 or Ag or C2. It's not a defined zoning district with specific limits as the other ordinance or as the other zoning districts are.
Don't clarify that, please. If the 95 acres is zoned PUD,
If the 95 acres is a planned unit development and is covered by a PUD ordinance, that ordinance, the benefit of a PUD is that you can include various diverse uses. You can modify traditional setbacks to make a project work that might not other work in your traditional single zoning district, an R1 and R2, a C1, C2. So your PUD can organize a parcel in such a way as to make all those uses work well together. And in that PUD, and I remember a meeting I sat in, I think maybe it was online, but where there was discussion about Joel's desire to use that upper 10 acres for 55 and older. And my understanding is, and I haven't looked at the land use map, I apologize, but with regard to the PUD, there was definitely a consensus of that group that seemed to be a good and appropriate use of that area. And that it would likely be shown on the PUD that is not yet done, that is getting slowed down for additional input.
so Doug, explain to me when you say it's shown on the PUD, shown on, what's a PUD is an ordinance.
The PUD ordinance would allow for the construction of 55 and older.
Correct.
Yes.
Where?
Well, I think the map,
What dictates where?
there would, you're calling it the land use map. I think there would be, the final map would be tied to and associated with the PUD.
Correct.
So that could show then your 55 and older on your 10 acres. Maybe it's going to show more in the other corner down at the bottom, because that was talked about at 1.2. I don't know that that's, I would say my take is that hasn't been decided yet where all it would show that.
Well, the map does decide that. The
Wait,
map shows you where
I don't think-
residential is.
The current map,
Shows you where the city hall is.
the current map in the comprehensive plan you're referring to?
Yeah.
Yeah, and I think that's subject to modification and change depending on what eventually gets cited with regard to the PUD.
Well, that's why I said down to have specific on the land use map before, and I was told no.
Well, I don't know who told you no.
is some of the confusion here coming from the fact that in the end, there's two maps? There's the zoning map, and then there's a detailed map within the PUD. Or when the PUD is adopted, do those details then carry over to the comprehensive plan?
I think if the PUD, as it progresses and eventually gets adopted, would be inconsistent with what the zoning map currently shows, the zoning map would have to be, or the land use map, excuse me, would have to be modified to be in line with the PUD that eventually. We want those two to be inconsistent.
So even if the intent was from you or this council today to put my 55 and over there, even if you said that, okay? And then all of a sudden, a year from now or 2 years from now, there's a change. Well, they're gonna look at that land use map and say, I don't see the 55 and over up there. It ain't gonna happen.
I think the point that Mr. Herman was making is that once the PUD ordinance is approved, then the future land use map also needs to be amended to be consistent with the PUD ordinance.
But I was trying to do it before it was even final.
Yes.
So they weren't working with me.
But, okay, your last sentence, I was trying to do it before.
I asked specifically to have my 55 and older shown in my area.
Right.
And it never happened.
And you and I had the conversation, the same that I did with Mr. Birds as well, that we can't specify that right now until we get through.
Everything is specified right now. Where's City Hall shown on the map?
It isn't.
Sure it is. It shows it right on the map.
No, it shows the civic use. It doesn't tell us where City Hall
Town
is.
hall, what's it called? Town.
So let me bring this.
I think later in the comprehensive plan, there's a sketch that shows some ideas for that area on a different page. There's one page that has more of just the color that shows civic. And then later in the
I
plan,
don't know what to know. Just like, I'm frustrated because I've got to know where, I'm gonna say, I'm a 1/3 player in this whole thing. And a small 1/3. But I'm also a player that could do the whole thing. I just don't want to slip away because of communication. This is the main reason why I'm standing here. Because I want to stick the shovel in the ground when I can, and what I can. And I don't expect you to, you know what, I'm taking it right now that what I've been saying has been purposely ignored.
So clarify for me, please. Are you speaking support or opposition of the PUD?
I'm for the PUD. Because that allows me to put everything I want in that zone.
Okay.
Not the deed.
Well, yes, it does. It's the land use map that doesn't allow you to put it places. So my argument is the land use map, not the PUD.
Okay.
So, but how do I support the PUD if I can't get anything that I want on my piece? And I'm a landowner. I'm not. This isn't somebody outside looking in. I'm a physical landowner.
So, okay.
And I would appreciate when you have meetings that I be contacted. And no, I did not get mail for this meeting or the P&Z meeting.
Okay.
Thank you.
Any questions for Mr. Callahan?
Gary Bird, 7815 Bird Road. I do remember meeting with Mr. Merton and Mr. Kraft. I don't know, you mentioned the date, Mr. Mayor. I don't remember a lot about that conversation other than we were kind of tail end of even doing any planning on that land anymore because we ran into so many pitfalls trying to deal with the city. We thought years ago that maybe the city was going to buy 20 acres and then we were going to do some commercial, and then they weren't satisfied with that. So we moved it around, we moved our stuff around a little bit. Finally, I lost interest in it and I lost the people that were going to do this stuff. So we just kind of threw that away. And I don't remember too much about the conversation that I had with you, Mr. Kraft. And you did send me a letter, a follow-up letter the next day. But I do remember the part about we're going to conduct a housing study. And I do remember my comment there. I said, your housing study is going to tell you that you need more affordable housing. But I understand cities have to go through that process to gain that information. There's one thing about Peosta, you can't make Peosta Farley, you can't make Peosta Upward, you can't make Peosta Dewey. It takes, there's only about 25 houses in this whole city that are over 40 years old. So you have high valuation houses in this town because they all been built in the last 20 years. So I understand, you know, when they try to put a plan together to make more affordable housing, but boy, it's going to be trouble. I don't know how you do it. Anyway, I just wanted to briefly go back to that meeting that we had then. I think one thing is we as landowners are scared to hell of what the city will do with this PUD. It's because of communication. You know, I see in the newsletters that I wasn't paying attention, I admit that, but I had to start paying attention. And I see in the newsletters and articles where the city has met with the landowners 5, 6 times. Well, I'm here to tell you, I met with those two once. I went to a April 27th meeting, and I went to a May 25th meeting. Those are the 3 times that I've met. And I believe that the city council and the administrators and the steering committee and RDG has put a lot of time and effort in this plan, especially trying to do it during this pandemic. Unfortunately, the landowners were left out from the very beginning. I'm not sure why the landowners weren't asked to be on the steering committee. No one will tell me. I guess each of you will have to question it to yourselves individually. All the while this planning was taking place, I kept saying to myself, they can't do anything about moving forward without the landowners' involvement. After all, this is Peosta. Me, the Burges, the Callahans, the McDonoughs, and the Conlons own the land. Yes, I mentioned that 27th meeting in April and the 25th of May. Each of the landowners of the 95 acres expressed willingness to work with the city. However, absolutely, none of our input on the 27th meeting was addressed on the maps or the drawings that we were showed at the May 25th meeting. Absolutely nothing. We mentioned ball fields and soccer fields, and every one of us said, get rid of that lake. Talked about more commercial. We certainly talked about expanding the Minisburg business. And after I left that meeting, I thought RG has a lot more work to do before the owner can ever accept. Besides not being asked to be included on the planning committee, another thing that troubles me is that the May 25th meeting with RDG and the mayor, we, the owners of the land, were not told by the city attorney or the mayor that day, we met, that at that evening council meeting, they would vote on this comprehensive master parks plan. As a lifelong resident of Peosta, I never thought we would conduct business. And while the city may have met its legal requirements on posting notices of the hearings, caused this need to pause why the landowners aren't sent a notification on something so important. Individually, I asked you why it is I got a public hearing notice for the 4 lots and 13 acres, Mary Falls and Peosta Mini Storage, but it was not sent a public hearing notice on the PUD or the adoptions of town plan. Again, your answer may be we met the requirements of the law. So I'm here to say, I believe that that is legal, and what is legal and what is conscionably right should not be that different. I get the fact that the individuals on the council, you make your decisions based on value of the information that you receive. And that's a tough job. I also ask that you individually, if you do not think it's bold disregard for one's personal property, not to ask for permission to enter on it. Would I be allowed to go on your property without permission? Individually, did you not find it a little embarrassing at the August 10th meeting of the city council? To me, it would be unquestionable to do such a thing. But that evening, the mayor continued to work angles to try to get that topo work done without our permission, possibly using drones and airplanes. What I would like to see is communication, Mr. Mayor. I would like to sit down with you. I would like to, I'm sorry, but RDG doesn't meet my specs. I think we could have done this a hell of a lot cheaper with the landowners telling the city what they wanted, what they'd like to see. We could throw punches back and forth and move it around. We could have got this done. We wouldn't have to go through all this frustration. Thank you.
Mr. Bruce, may I ask you a question?
Yes, sir.
Are you in support of, or are you opposed to,
Yes, PUD as you're planning it.
as it sits today?
Yes.
Are you,
And I, as I started out to say, I'm scared of what this city is planning to do. And the biggest problem is RDG. Because RDG got this paper and they put all these beautiful pictures out. And now you've got the entire city all fired up to see that this is what's going to happen. And I'll bet there's a number of people think the city owns that land. And I'm thinking that a number of the people, and they've stated in your May newsletter, that the landowners are all for this. And I disagree. I'm against the PUD being imposed on me without my input. Any other questions?
yes, if I may. Are you interested in having a PUD for your property in some form other than what it currently is?
I'll have to talk to my legal advisor on that.
Okay. I appreciate your input.
Down on 967 Redbird Lane, first of all, I've got two important people with me in the audience. Military, I'd like them to introduce themselves. I came from California to hear what we had to say.
Thank you, John. My name is Sergeant Peosta. I'm a friend of the McDonald family. I came out here to visit after hearing about what's going on. And just give us support, to the family and get some detail like we had to make. And it's smart to do something like that, all the information. And I think one of the most simplest, maybe simple question for me, but different, coming from the outside and looking in, is a basic fundamental idea of people owning property, the property being rezoned, and now those people aren't allowed to do what they normally could do with property before it was zoned. The gentleman that was here before me, this gentleman, he touched on it a lot, but I think it's where most of the anger stems from. I mean, think about property, we're all property owners, we all have property, and all of a sudden, you think something's gonna be nice, if I take that, let's say, quarter of an inch for your property, it's not a lot, but now you can't do anything in the vicinity of the property because of the zoning until this max or whatever it is, to also get delegated. And so, because I understand the comprehensive plan, I understand what, how it gets developed, and from what I heard, I just can't agree with someone owning something and then not being able to do, fundamentally what things that they want to do on there to improve their lifestyle, their livelihood. I've seen a lot of it in a lot of different places, in a lot of different ways. And usually I just kind of sit there and say, you know what, everyone will figure it out, and that's some point. And we'll all come to an understanding. But I think it's just someone owning something and having it taken away, gets everybody a little bit aroused.
Thank you for that, and thank you for your service.
You're welcome.
And I mean that sincerely.
This is,
Deb, if I may, please, you would address the council from the podium. If there's others that would like to speak, I think it would be appropriate if you spoke your part, and then they would step up, introduce themselves, and say what they have to say.
yeah. Anyway, on your comprehensive plan, on page 38, it says guide to decision making. Property owners still decide. property owners decide the future land use map depicts new land uses privately owned property.
Deb, if I may respectfully interrupt, the public hearing is regarding the PUD. I haven't yet heard if you are in support of or against the
I'm
PUD.
against the PUD.
Okay, and what's your
I'm against-
reason for being against the PUD?
Well, first of all, I own the Peosta mini storage and I'm in the PUD. And I should not be allowed in a PUD. I've been C2, you heard my letter, you read it, no sense repeating it. When I talked to RDG, my daughter Sarah, who's in the military, she was on that call as well. RDGs, we asked them, who set the perimeters of this land? So the city. You, Mr. Mayor, says it's RDG. So who is it?
Deb, it was long enough ago. I can't I don't recall what the specific conversations were. If it would help the conversation, I'll say it was me. But I still need to hear, why is it you're against the PUD?
Because I'm, first of all, in the PUD and I don't belong there. You
Okay,
guys are holding me hostage. It's my main source of income. Take me out, let me run my business. Second of all, you didn't even, you talk about the 95 acres. I had no idea that I was included in this plan. I've asked people around town. We didn't know we were in this plan. I talked to steering committee people. They said, no, they never mentioned anything about Mary Call or the mini storages being in there.
Can I ask which steering committee members you talked to?
I talked to Kathy Canale, I talked to, another family member, talked to Sean Kleesner. I talked to Melinda Birds. Had a call in to Megan Pierce.
You didn't talk to Megan though?
No,
so you're against it, you're against the PUD as it is today.
yes,
Would you be in support of a PUD if it looks something other than what it is now and conforms to your needs?
I would have to talk to my legal counsel about that too.
Because the purpose of this public hearing is to continue to get input so we can make a PUD that does have broad support. Obviously, we've not hit that point yet, and we will continue to do these hearings until we do.
Well, I've been in this business long enough, and you do not have a city that gears it up without property owners knowing about it. I've heard from staff.
I'm gonna stop you there. You have heard about this numerous times.
No,
I haven't-
it's not that. It's, you have a developer talk to the city.
That is one way it can go. It is not limited to just that way.
Well, let's just put it this way, Mr. Mayor. You talked to the landowners first,
We did.
and RDG said the same thing. They apologized. They said we should have talked to the landowners. My daughter was on the call.
That
Get the
is,
story straight.
that is simply not true. We have documented meetings where we were talking specifically with landowners long before the PUD had its
And when
first
you
daylight.
talked to us landowners, you wanted our input. We went to 2 meetings, went to the last one, nothing was on. Not the 3 things we asked for. Pretty simple.
Can I ask what those 3 things were?
Expanding of my mini storage. The 2 brothers wanted 2 acres each. And the park named after the legacy of my parents, Birds Park. See any of that on your plan? No.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I believe the same. Go ahead. You know, when Joe was up here talking about, he was talking about listening and modifying things, like you said, we listened and then we modified. Like, how did you modify things? Like, do you have examples of the modifications that you did or?
I think that's evidenced by the accusation earlier that there's a multitude of variants of the PUD proposal. It's been modified, I don't know how many times.
27 pages still the same.
So I want to be clear if you're talking about the comprehensive plan or the
I'm
PUD.
talking about.
Okay, so you're saying,
Waterfront, water edge, PUD, it's in the.
So I can speak to that a little bit because I was on the steering committee. is originally one of the first ones that came out, there was a lot more, I don't know what the numbers were, multifamily residents, right? So we decided to take a look at that, that's not gonna cut it, right? We don't want.
And when was that? Like, when you first started?
Yeah,
When you
yeah.
first started, yeah.
So back in March, April, right,
4 months ago.
you know, of a while back, so then we decided that, okay, 6 gajillion apartment building, right? So let's modify that to single family homes. So there's been a lot of that based off of things that we're hearing from people, right? So I mean, that's what I can speak to.
Well, and you know, with the survey, I know that there were a considerable amount of people that wanted a splash pad, they wanted hiking trails, and they were opposed to some of that housing.
Right, right. So that's what we listened to and scaled that
And
back.
then as far as, like, you heard about the lake numerous times, but we're not modifying that at all yet.
What did we hear about the lake?
Well, that people are really not for the lake.
I've heard 2 comments that they weren't. Gentleman over here. I think that's the only comment. I heard. Okay, thank you, okay.
Saying that it's not with the water drainage, it's not gonna
Gary also, yes.
be. And I mean, like, did people ask for a lake?
Yeah.
Where did they ask for a lake?
Original surveys that went out, there's a lot of
Water.
fishing, water, trails.
We could probably read several off of the dream board in the back.
There was a lot that on there.
The one with
More water, more fishing.
eight.
Well, they didn't give specifics, right?
And the other thing to consider is we get feedback. We can't necessarily act on all of the feedback from every individual. Sometimes there's conflicting feedback and a judgment needs to be made.
And so how long is this projected to last? Like, are we gonna be
Hypothetically,
doing this for how long?
hypothetically, till we get it as right as we can.
Anybody else in the room care to speak about the,
Terry Bird.
yes, Jerry?
One thing I just want to ask you, one of the problems with Blacktop myself, with this plan is that there's so many different plans out there. I request that you give us the latest plan. Land use plan, comprehensive plan, there's so many copies out there, we can hold 2 up and they're 2 are different. We don't know which one. A lot of the pages are not numbered. So it's hard to compare what page it is. I prefer to have all the pages numbered and put the date stamp on it so we know what the latest plan is.
Would you like that answer now?
Yes.
Okay, City of Peosta website, under the
You
government,
go to the website.
under the government section, the comprehensive plan as it was approved on May 25th is there. There's one version. That is the approved
Is
version.
that in Spanish or that in English?
It's the first I've heard of Spanish, obviously. If there's a clerical error, that's that.
So that needs to be addressed. Just need to make sure we have the right one. There's a lot of them.
Do you,
Thank you.
you would also ask about the planned unit development?
Yes.
Yes, so the latest version of that is also available at peostaplan.com. That's the same place it's been from the start of this project, March of this year.
I just want to make sure you always stay expanded and I'd like to see a page number.
So we may or may not have page numbers.
I know you
That's a level of detail that I don't consider relevant for this
Well,
purposes of accepting it or not. It may be easier. I won't argue that. But there's one version of the comprehensive plan available online, on the city's website, and there's one version of the PUD available. And there may be, I don't know how many other versions circulating in print. Those aren't the final versions. So for your final version, we have established those 2 places, and those have been consistent throughout the project.
Thank you.
Dennis Birds, 17287 Rock Road, Monticello. I could be with PUD, but not the one they got now.
Okay, what would you need to see different?
I'd like to see cleaned up my parents' legacy.
Okay,
And I'm willing to donate 1 acre of my property to make sure that's done. $50,000 value. Plus, I'd like to have that over 5 years, so I can pay off the taxes.
I appreciate that. Thank you.
Gary Bird, 7815 Bird Road. I know this is probably not for you, but it's the only time that I get an audience that I can actually talk to you.
Gary, what is it about? This is a PUD.
Yeah, well, it was regarding the second meeting on May 25th at City Hall down here with RDG. And according to the specs of their RDG's definitions, they would take input from parties, landowners, city, and develop a plan. And when they got that information, they would have a meeting after that. They have a meeting with the steering committee to approve that plan, those changes. On May 25th, after our meeting, with the landowners, the mayor, and the city attorney, what time did the steering committee meet?
Can you help me? How is this affecting the PUD public hearing?
That's why I said I can't get an audience with you otherwise, Mr. Mayor. That's why I just asked. I apologize.
Mr. Birds, I am available, and we have met individually outside of the meetings, and
All right.
every meeting has an open public comment section at the end of it.
Didn't you brought that up? Mr. Mayor, have you ever received a phone call from me asking for a return call?
Yes. Okay, hang on. This is a PUD public hearing. Can you tell me how this supports
I
that?
apologize. You brought it up about, you answer my questions and your phone is always available.
I did not say I was available, but I have made myself available to meet with residents or businesses. It's part of my job.
You failed to call me. Ask me to call.
Anybody else care to address the council on the PUD public hearing? How about online? Okay, hearing none, I will close the public hearing. And I would like to address the community. From the very beginning, this was intended to be, and the city has aspired to make this an open dialogue, an open exchange of ideas. And the city takes its responsibility seriously to plan properly for the future of Peosta. And sometimes that means that we have to think more than 2 or 3 or 5 years or 10 years in the future, 30, 50 years in the future, so that the city can develop and we can prepare the correct kind of infrastructure to support that future growth. So that's what has started all of this. This is all rooted in a very specific objective to do more future planning than what we have done in the past, longer term. And the way we went into that was to start with surveys by community engagement. And we've done a lot of that. There's been numerous surveys that have gone, and we take all that feedback seriously. Of course, that feedback sometimes isn't, there's mutually exclusive things in there, right? So we try to look for those trends of what is most important to the community as a whole. And that's the survey results that you see in the comprehensive plan and the PUD documentation. So while we can't necessarily provide for everybody's requests or wishes, what we are trying to do through the comprehensive plan and specifically the PUD is lay out a vision for what we understand the community to want. This isn't something that the city council dreamt up in a back room. This is the deliberate output of taking all of the input from the surveys and community, numerous community engagements. So I'm very disappointed that we've gotten to a point where this is as adversarial as it seems to be right now, absent any official action. There has been no action on the PUD to date, and the reason there hasn't been action on that is because this council hasn't yet sensed from the community that we have a vision that has adequate support. And that's coming through loud and clear tonight, right? That is coming through loud and clear over the past couple of months. Now that's, I think I can honestly say, if you go back to March, when the comprehensive plan was approved, including the land use map, at that point, I did not have a sense that there was this resistance or this disconnect between what the PUD is shaping up as and other members of the community. That wasn't on my radar at all, and I suspect it wasn't on the council members either when the action was taken to approve the comprehensive plan as it was. So what I would just like to reassure is nobody's trying to do anything by sleight of hand. Nobody's trying to ramrod a certain outcome that's against the community. It's in fact the exact opposite. And that's why we have had the multiple open houses, the public, well, this is our first public hearing, but we've had the open houses, we've had a steering committee made up of members, deliberately different facets of the community. So we would have proper cross-representation in the steering committee. So the message is received. We don't have it yet. And we're not going to take an action to approve it tonight. And I don't see us taking an action to approve it until we can have a forum like this where the community can come in, including landowners, and voice their support of it. So as we go forward, I have a request, and that is, again, please understand, we're trying to do the same thing everybody else is, and that's trying to plan an appropriate future vision for Peosta. And we can have an agreement between us that we're not going to move forward if there's broad community. This council is not interested in passing anything like that. But we do need to work together and understand that the end vision may not be exactly what I want or what you want, but we have to find some common ground. And that's going to take continued dialogue back and forth. So we'll continue to do this as long as we need to, as John said, until we can get to a PUD that has that broad support. But I'll ask you to please be understanding, we're doing the best we can to maintain the communication. There's a legal threshold, and then there's as much as we've done. I'd love to do even more communication, and we can make that an objective going forward. But please understand, most of us have got other daytime jobs as well, so we're working with limited time availability. We've got staff that is absolutely committed to this project. They're also committed to many other projects. So just be understanding with us, and please don't assume that we're trying to move something forward without that support. Clarify for me, Doug, how many there's one public hearing that's required? To pass a PUD ordinance.
Before you pass it, the council needs to have a public hearing.
One public hearing.
Yeah.
Okay.
And I would suggest, however, even though you had a public hearing tonight, you aren't taking action tonight because this isn't a situation where you're probably going to be taking action at your next meeting either. It would make sense to schedule another public hearing like this before you would take action, because it'll be down the road far enough. There'll be enough time passed that would be appropriate.
Thank you. So I want to be clear about the intent of what the city is trying to do. It's planning for an appropriate future that meets the desires of the community. And it's just going to take a little work to get there. And we want every member of the community that we can to be a part of it. So I'm thrilled to have the turnout tonight, even though it might have turned into a bit of an adversarial conversation. I'm thrilled that there's this much engagement. So please stick with us in this and continue to give us the feedback and work with us as we evolve the PUD to fit the community's needs. Thank you. All right, that concludes the public hearing for the Water's Edge Planned Unit Development. We will now move to the public hearing for Peosta Mini Storage. This is specifically regarding an ordinance amending the zoning map for Peosta Mini.
Then 967 Redbird Lane, 94, the rezoning of my property from A1 to C2. And I don't want to be in a PUD. There's no need for me to be in a PUD. So I want to be outside of PUD. Barry Call needs to be outside of her PUD as well. They said they took in consideration structures. RBG in my telephone conversation, they took in consideration. We were there. It was the city that wanted me in this PUD. I don't think the city has the means to buy me out.
So the hearing is for the rezoning request.
Right, so I'm asking for council to take into consideration. I don't know who let them down this pipeline of saying it would be something different there. You burn me up, I don't care what you do, but I'm not gonna move. I've been there for 25 years. You're not moving the substation, you're not moving the lift station down by Cox Springs Road, you're gonna go around it. So I don't understand why we got put into this thing in the beginning. And you talk about expansion, you want, Peosta wants to expand, they want their business owners to expand. You guys are halting me, holding me hostage. And it's a silly reason. I had a counselor, a zoning guy say, you should have been over two meetings ago. It's totally ridiculous. I don't know how you can sit there and think, what you're doing to me is right.
The action in front of us that we're having the public hearing on
Yes.
is your rezoning request.
Yes, so I'm asking for a request.
Any questions from Ms. McDonough?
I don't think any of you guys have a problem that I'm running the mini storage there. Thank you.
For 7815 Bird Road. I think there'd be a lot of citizens disappointed if mini storage went away or didn't expand. There's a lot of people in town that use those facilities. I mean, we got two of them. So I'm for this rezoning from A1 to C.
Thank you.
Let me ask a question. My biggest concern is not necessarily whether your land is in the PUD or not, okay? Is that if you were to start construction on a new building and it would be in an area where we might want to put a road, okay? So my concern is that we'd have to pay for the land for the road and for the building and lost revenue, whatever, whatever that you'd have for the future. Whether you're in the PUD or not, I guess I don't know, I'm just thinking this out loud. If you wouldn't be in the PUD, would we be able to access that land to get to the PUD?
Yes.
My concern is the additional cost that we'd have to do to acquire that, whether that be 5 years, 6 years, 10 years down the road. You may not want to answer that question, I get it, because I don't want to tie you down to anything. I'm just trying to think outside the box.
One of the things that I asked was I want to be made whole. So when I met with RBG, I said, just move me to the south. You got your road here, and then anything in front could be whatever. But you would have to pay for other buildings that are torn down. So anything to the south, I own, whether it's singly or family. I don't see no problem. And in fact, I got an email from Sherry Greenwood. She loves to have storage there. She said, I see nothing, my tenants rent for me. And it's just an overload of what don't fit in there.
How far south do you own? Do you, or is it in conjunction?
So it's about where you'd want to come in with the road, and in front is about 1.5 acres. So I'm left with 2 acres. I need a total of 6. That was one of the discussions I had with our team. If you're coming through, I don't want to be on both sides of the road. I have to have 2 camera systems, 2 this, 2 that. It doesn't make sense. Mind you, it's gonna be expensive. Yeah.
When you talk about expanding, essentially shifting your operation further south to be below a beach extension, right?
Does it go south and east, or does it just go
It
south?
just goes straight south.
So does it end where the apartments end, where those smaller houses?
So the back end of the apartments and the townhouses,
Yeah.
we just shift that to the south. And then as wide as my property is now, we just slide it down.
So it doesn't go as far as the single dwelling houses.
Well, if I get additional ground, it would be.
So how much further?
I mean,
I'm just wondering, because there's a lot of.
right,
That are
there's that big, electrical line that goes through there, and it's kind of burned up there. There's a lot of fiber optic in there. So, you know, I'm pretty burned up with, behind, the apartment building now. And she planted these big bushes and kind of hiding.
So can I ask you, I'm not making any commitments. Is there a way that we, or a couple of us, could meet with you and talk about sliding things around?
From who owns the land that she's gonna wanna go to, you know what I mean?
Well,
Yeah,
I'm
that's
assuming it's
birds.
either, it's either her,
The
or
birds family.
It'd be more than just.
but I guess,
But I'm inquiring, I got a contract that I'm inquiring some extra property. From the birds family.
I guess my question is, what, if we were to table this tonight, have our conversation and come to some sort of an agreement, would that help
Yeah, we
you?
can sit down and talk.
No, I mean, it just help you and just at least,
I was hoping this would have done this 3 months ago. Yeah. I'm a communicator and, you know, that's the best way to get your answers,
right,
so.
but, go ahead.
Go ahead.
Well, I was just gonna say, but I know I've not received a phone call or I've not received an email asking to communicate. So communication goes both ways.
Mhm.
If we would table the ordinance zoning part, like what John's suggesting, could we have it done by next meeting? Next first.
We have to have another public hearing.
Planning zoning project review is.
Well, you're looking at expanding that footprint to change zoning on ground outside of the current request. I think you'd have to have P&Z look at that again because it's a change in the request. If I'm understanding right, the current site that Deb, you have is about 2.5 acres. If the discussion
Total I
went
have 3.56.
south of the road,
Yeah, that's about.
and if that's to be increased to 6, that's a change or an increase in the request of the property proposed to change to be rezoned. So you'd want to slip in a P&Z meeting ahead of your next meeting, and you would schedule another public hearing, and then you could consider it that same night, however.
I mean, is that something that, I'd be more than willing to
So
meet
I
sometime.
would meet with you and Jerry, or?
Let's have the conversation.
And get everybody that you can involved, that we all.
Whoever needs to be involved when we set this up there. So we're not,
All right, we'll do, thanks, guys.
Thank you. Any other public comment regarding the rezoning request for Peosta mini storage? Hearing none in the room, I'll ask online. And hearing none there, I will close the public hearing on the Peosta mini store and move us to the ordinance amending the zoning
we need
map.
a motion to table on this. on this one? Motion to table this up?
Common practice is to, how our councils do that, they'll table something even though technically it's not on the floor. Nobody's made a motion to approve the first reading. So really, when you table something, there should be a motion, a second, it's on the floor for discussion, and then you table it. Another being practice of this council, and a lot of them is, if you've got something on the agenda that you're deciding to put off to another meeting, you do table it, that's fine. So if that's your other option would be just to, by agreement of the council, you're gonna put that off to your next meeting and not take any, kind of die for lack of a motion, if you will, based on that discussion. But either way is fine. I think traditionally this council would have a motion to table it for further discussion at your next meeting.
Then to follow your lead, Mr. Herman, I'll just simply ask, is there a motion from the council to approve the rezoning request for Peosta mini storage? Okay, do we have a second? Hearing none, the motion does not move forward. So then we'll go.
Yeah, and I think you could ask John for the record to reflect that you'd like this to be on this agenda for consideration after you have a meeting with the property owner.
I would like to request that to be on the agenda. What he said. So is that a motion or is that a motion where we have to vote or are we just making
It
it?
doesn't have to be, you as a council member have a right to have something reflected in the minutes.
All right, thank you.
As you can tell, years in the role, we're still learning the process.
You have no obligation to follow Robert's Rules of Order, if you will. That's kind of the general practice that everybody should follow. Most people don't follow it. But it does provide more order if you can work your way that direction.
Thank you. So next on the agenda then with is the public hearing for the Mary Call property. I will hear you. Would anybody like to address the council regarding the rezoning request for the Mary Call?
Jill Call, 2117 Carter Road, Dubuque. My Mary's daughter-in-law, and I would like to move back to residential, like it should be. That's all.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Any questions for Ms. Call? Mrs. Call? Anybody else like to address the council on this one? How about online? Hearing none, I will close the public hearing and take us to the ordinance amending the zoning map for Mary Call property.
I'll make a motion to amend the zoning map.
I'll second. Go ahead. Go ahead.
Carry on.
My guy.
Motion carries with 5.
Thank you.
That concludes the public hearing section. Again, thank you, everybody, for your engagement tonight, whether it be for or against, regardless of what the context is. It's great to have the engagement. Thank you. We'll move on now to other matters besides public hearings.
In fact, let's let him clear the room.
Yeah, how about, I'm going to ask, or I'm not going to ask, I'm the mayor. Let's take a 5-minute recess for a quick refreshment break. We will reconvene at 7:50. All right, I've got 7:50. But please get back to your seats.
I just remember like.
Oh, yeah, I didn't even think about it.
That you said press there.
Do what?
Second and third at the end.
And I'll be also part of the birds rate. So it talks, if you guys are comfortable enough to bring this back up.
I didn't even think, of it, sorry.
Yeah, I didn't either.
So anyway.
So, okay,
Open it back up.
so should I just?
Yes.
Go to the
Start with that one.
I can start.
Then he can. Do we want to?
Always
Station.
We got him in, within the same section. So-
Yeah, get him out of here too.
Okay. I'll do that. I'm gonna take that motion. When I bring us back into session. We need a motion to waive the second and third readings of these ordinance.
Plus Doug.
Well, I should get that answer. From That's good. Let me get that procedural answer. Yeah, I guess.
You just wanted to recess right now, so all you have to do is say back out of recess, to go back to the emergency. You don't have to go back to the public hearing. Correct. You can just go back to the ordinance. After council approved the first reading and the UD stuff. Wanted to make assessment effective. Could bring that up if anybody wanted. Maybe. Just one council was explain the property. Typically, zoning, I don't recommend you would. Sometimes gets people heat, I think. But I think it's. So probably is. So is it something that's important people?
The Boy Scouts are happy with that.
That's
Dinner that I was supposed to go to.
all right. We'll call us back into session from recess.
Yeah, really.
See, that's what. All right, coming back from recess, we just finished the public hearings. We did recognize in the process of doing that, there's two ordinances that were approved, but we did not address the second and third readings of those ordinances, specifically the Royal Oaks East Fourth Edition and the, I'm sorry, not the Royal Oaks Fourth. Well, yes, that was one as well. So there's the ordinance amending the zoning map for Royal Oaks East Fourth. There's the ordinance amending the zoning map for Birds Green Acres Annex lots. And there's the ordinance amending the zoning map for the Mary Call property. In each one of those cases, we did not specifically address if the council would like to waive the second and third readings on those.
If I can throw in my 2 cents.
Absolutely.
Typically, when the waiver of the second and third readings of ordinances is something that we really should not take lightly, I guess. It should be done in emergent situations or situations. Or to put it another way, where there's clearly zero controversy over what you're doing. Because the whole idea behind an ordinance, which is a law, the resolution is kind of a policy statement, a motion is day-to-day. When you're passing a law, you really want to be sure the public has a lot of opportunity to be heard. That's the idea behind the 3 separate readings, 3 agendas, et cetera. So in these cases, even though it's a zoning change, which is one of those things that can get people more excited, if you look at any of these and think, a couple of these are just fixes or slam dunks, nobody wants anything different, kind of a fix, if you will. Even though, and I talked to Karen about this as well, sometimes in your ordinances, sometimes in your agenda, you may have a statement, the council may consider waiving the second and third readings. You don't have to have it there to do it. Okay, that's a discretionary function of the council. It doesn't hurt to have it in the agenda. I'll say it, probably a lot of people don't realize you have to have 3 readings and 3 separate readings and 3 separate meetings. So I think you're fine to take these actions tonight. I would just generally caution you that when you do waive second and third readings, you try to give some thought to whether or not you're cutting short the opportunity of the public to be heard.
Thank you, Mr. Harmon. So that being said, I'll walk through 3 of these. With that in mind, does a council, is there a motion to second and third readings for the Royal Oaks East 4th edition?
I'll make the motion. Waive the second and third for the votes.
I'll second.
Doug, aye.
John, I.
Okay.
And then motion to adopt, please.
I will make a motion to adopt the ordinance amending zoning map for Royal Oaks East 4th edition.
Second. Doug, aye.
John, I.
Okay.
Sorry, I got lost there. That was the Royal Oaks 4th one, right? Okay, thank you. The motion carries with 5. The second ordinance we approved tonight was the amending the zoning map for the Birds Green Acres annex lots.
Take a motion to waive the second, third reading. Second. Doug, aye.
John, I.
Jerry, aye.
Mike, aye.
I'll make a motion to adopt.
I'll second.
Doug, aye.
John, I.
Jerry, aye.
Mike, aye.
And then the third ordinance we approved tonight was the zoning map for the Mary Call property.
I'll make a motion to waive the second, third hearings.
Second that. Doug, aye.
John, I. Jerry, I.
Mike, aye.
I'll make a motion to adopt.
Second.
Doug, aye.
John, I.
Mike, aye.
All of those motions carried with 5.
And I will make sure that I call Jill first thing in the morning. Jill called and Mary called to let them know.
Thank you, Annette.
They're just outside, but
Thanks for
Standing right there.
tell
You can still get her. Okay, so we are not changing the agenda here, but I am going to go out of sequence in the interest of a few guests that we have here from outside Peosta. I will move us to Public Works. You okay with that, Mr. Ludwig? I'm sorry, Public Works first?
Sure.
Okay. And again, in the interest of, that's why I did ask. We've got 3 items here. We've got guests to speak to. So I will move us first to item 6B, which is the contract payment number 12 for the wastewater treatment facility. And am I correct? Mr. Schneider, you're here for that?
Yeah, any updates? I did one. So the wastewater plant is proceeding at a great rate. We're actually nearing the point where we're ready to do shakeouts and startups. Okay, so the manufacturers will come and actually work the equipment, turn it up, get it energized, run through everything, make sure it's the operators are trained. At the same time they're doing that, we've also got the augmented systems out there doing the programming for the automated control systems, this equipment, and for the SCADA network in general. So a lot of the major construction efforts that need to be done out there are done. They're finishing up, they're cleaning up a lot of the stuff. As far as major construction, we're really wrapped up. So by the end of October timeframe, we'll be talking about switching over pipes so that water actually starts flowing to that plant instead of to the lagoons. This payment application is just waiting monthly.
I know we talked about this, and I think it was an email today about a tour.
Yes, and we'll talk about that. I know that the council is very interested in going through the wastewater treatment plant. And I'd rather do it on a day that we don't have a work session or that we don't have a council meeting.
Yeah, fantastic.
Because I know it's probably gonna take a little bit, maybe an hour or a little longer than that. And I know some of the staff members want to go through there as well.
Sure, yeah, that, we can schedule that anytime if you guys want to do afterwards. It's not a problem. I do have a pre-existing potential tour that I'm giving to my Cub Scouts on October 7th, so maybe not that day. There might be 15 8-year-olds, 9-year-olds that just want to get home.
Herding cats.
Yeah.
What is that, before or after its operation?
This is before.
Okay.
I wanted to, so apparently the last time they took a tour, past 10 minutes. 10-year-olds interest.
All right, so while you're still here with us, Dean, anything to add for this payment application?
No, that payout looks good.
All right, so it's a payment of $366,935.63. Do we have a motion to approve it?
I'll make a motion for contract payment.
You have a concern, John?
No,
Oh, sorry.
second. Doug, aye. John, aye.
Mike, I,
Motion carries with 5.
just curious, how many more payments do we have?
Hopefully, as far as the completion date, final completion, we're watching that close out, will likely occur in May or June. Your major remaining pay apps are gonna be probably through October, and they're gonna be kind of, you may get one, but they're probably gonna be nominal at best.
Super low.
Nothing's gonna happen until we start to get rid of that sludge that's accumulated.
Yep.
In the spring.
Very good. Thank you, Eldon. And then I think you're also here for change order number 4, correct?
So, sorry, I just gotta pull up on my phone, so you keep some of this stuff handy, but so, change order number 4. This covers 4 items that we've kind of been working through, the last couple of months. The first item is to apply, caulk sealant in all the precast roof joints. This is the steel roofs, you can see it, but basically it's the caulking between the joints on the sidewalls here. On the overhead, cleans up the look a little bit. And so there are some gaps that exceeded the tolerances, so it was starting to look a little shady. And some of the grout that came down from Monday toward the roof covers. So we had all those cleaned up. This basically where they had those big gaps, those were done, but all the other joints were done too. This change order covers basically only the cost of those other joints that would have otherwise been fine. So you're not including payment for those joints.
On that specific one, Eldon, can you tell the council what was the cost for the ones that we are not paying for?
Yeah, so it'd be on page 2. You've got 746 lineal feet that you're paying for, and 184 feet that are deducted out of that.
Ah, I see. Thank you. So of what would have been
Would have been 2,600 and 600 mistake off of that.
okay, thank you. I think there's a couple more items on there too, right?
Item 2, we had a light fixture in one of the explosion proof or the electrically rated rooms that needed the explosion proof. It wasn't scheduled as an explosion proof fixture, so we have to change it to a fixture. That's the difference between the cost of those fixtures.
Is that just a miss, or is that just a miss? Was that in the design?
So it was scheduled as like an F2, it should have been an F2X.
Thanks.
Third item is for the motor connections. So as a part of some of the redundancy requirements that the DNR requires on pumps, commonly you have like one pump has 50% capacity, second pump has a second 50% capacity, and then you have a third pump in case one of those pumps fails. Rather than in this plant building 3 cells for these things, there are a couple spots where we just install one. But we want to have basically being given a shelf spare so that we can go and replace that quickly. The electrical connections to get that shelf spare installed quickly, we want to use a pin and sleeve, which is basically a special type of receptacle that you quickly disconnect rather than have to go up into a termination box, unscrew lugs, and match wires. So basically what you have now is a wired plug on the end of these certain pumps that have shelf spares. And so the change order is to get those pin and sleeve receptacles installed. And then the fourth item was during the paving, the asphalt paving of the general area, parking lot, whatever you want to call it, turnaround area. When they were getting that ready, this upgrade it was bouncing back. Dean was kind of there for that observation, so they poured out a foot and then replaced that with rock. So that last cost number 4 was for that excavation pour out and replacement of rock.
All right. Dean, we always like to get your perspective.
So for the most part, I agree with all the change orders. I do have concerns with the change order on the caulking. I think some of that cost was taken into consideration by the size of the gaps. The cost that was provided by the subcontractor, therefore, I do not feel that the city should do fairly on that cost. With a deduction of only $600 on the lineal footage, because I feel that the subcontractor based his price knowingly how sloppy the joints were due to the fact that the grout leached through and the cleanup and the amount of caulk that it was going to take on the excessive gapping.
I guess the way I look at it, if I'm building a house and I have Joe building my house, I'm spending $300,000-$400,000 on the house. And I go in there and the minor joints and the molding's wrong, the spacing of the tile floor is wrong, it looks like crap. It's functionable. But I'm paying $300,000 to $400,000 for a new house. This, to me, I look at it the same way. We're paying for quality and they should give us quality. Personally, I'm against 1 and 2.
To be clear, we did check those at unit price against ours means other buildings, and that $3.50 per linear foot is in line with what the industry has for expectations on how you estimate putting that caulk in.
It may be industry standards,
Yeah.
but still it's not right. We're paying for quality and immediate quality. Is my opinion. Okay, no different than you buy a house and a new house and 6 months later, the roof's leaking on it. Well, past industry standards, but you go up there and the shingles are all screwed up. They're not in a row. It passes standards, but you'd be pissed about it. So.
So if this was a subcontractor, can we get him back to do the job right?
So the remediation was filling those joints, the remediation was covered. You're not paying for that remediation. What you're paying for is that all the other joints in that building were also caulked, even though that they were.
Can you say that again? So
they caulked all the ceiling joints that didn't meet spec. You're not paying for that. What this change order cost includes is all the other joints in the building as you go down the building, also getting that same treatment.
But I disagree with the fact that we would have to pay with something that's partially done, a partially finished product. Now to have that project completed, we have to pay the remainder of it because of fault of either work performance or the product that we received.
It was built in.
You wouldn't have had to have filled those jobs.
They did not meet the requirements of the spec.
The spec did not have them included filling the joints.
You're right, it did, but the gapping of.
Yeah, so those were taken care of at all.
We're not gonna accept something, we're not gonna accept this joint to be done and this one not.
I know, and that's what the change order is for, is to say, you're not gonna accept that. But they shouldn't have to necessarily put that in, just because this one over here was a little gappy. They shouldn't have to tear out every single window casing just because one window casing is bad.
Right, but they shouldn't have had to caulk none of them. And then we want to then spend the money to caulk the rest of them.
Well, they could have grouted too, but the decision was made to use caulk.
Or they could put the panels in correctly.
They did put the panels in correctly. The panels as they were built had waves in them in such a way that they created larger gaps. That didn't meet standard, and you are not paying for them to fix that.
They should have been rejected. You ain't gonna buy a 2x4 that that goes 8 inches to build a wall, you're gonna dig through the pile to find something that's.
I understand. These are custom-
Same thing
custom
here,
made,
same
custom
thing here.
fabricated, you pass these.
Yep, same thing here. They should have rejected them. The engineering should have rejected them, saying, these ain't straight. These ain't gonna pass. That's my opinion, and I'll shut up.
I think using your window analogy, it's not that the window was replaced, it was replaced with a window that looks different than the other windows. Because now we have a joint that's caulked and the rest, unless we choose to
Yeah, but-
electively caulk the rest.
I had an analogy that would tear it out. There's not a great analogy, I'm just telling you, there were seams that were very gappy. And they wouldn't have just looked good cleaned up. They'll look tall.
What's the lifespan?
They also did not meet specifications.
They didn't meet
Of the gapping.
specifications for the gap,
Correct.
but otherwise, performance-wise, to throw a precast plank away. Because of a performance issue related to just some waviness of the line.
That's why I feel you give the contractor options,
We did give the contractor out.
and that would be.
reviewed those.
So maintenance down the road though, this is gonna be a lot more maintenance, right? Every 5 years, you're gonna have to go recall those seams.
No, I mean, these are.
They're internal.
Oh, inside walls, not external?
What say ye, council? We have
You're talking to me for a minute. But you're not.
other council, CIM. We have an action item in front of us to approve a change order. Yeah, and we've gotten input from our engineer and from our public works director.
Yes, I'd make a motion to pay the change order minus number 1 until we can get a better explanation of why it wasn't done correctly first.
So the panels were installed, so the concrete, precast concrete ceiling panels, they're prefabricated, made in the factory. They come to the site, they're offloaded, they're put onto the thing and molded in place. They use a backer rod or grout to fill it. In certain spots that gap was such that they needed to use that backer rod because otherwise the grout was going to fall down. Those were the areas that are exposed. Those are the areas that are large gaps that needed to be remediated. Doesn't affect the functional structural performance of that at all. It's purely an aesthetic piece, and if you go take a look at it, it looks really not much different than these right here. It's just that it wasn't scheduled to have that call. So otherwise, it would have looked like 2 concrete panels with a chamfer, stick them together with up to a 1/4 inch, anywhere from a 1/4 to 3/8 inch gap.
So there's no structural issues, like you said.
No.
It's cosmetic. Going back to houses, you're putting new carpet in your house, new carpet, they unroll, and there's a stain in there. You can't get out, you'll be okay with that. Because it doesn't do anything to carpet, but it's new carpet, there's already a stain there, so you're saying that's okay.
I think the question is, it was decided that it was not okay, the city decided it was not okay to have those gaps exposed and that they needed to be filled. And then the city at that point also decided that all the other gaps should be filled too, so it's
Right.
whether or not you think you should have to pay for those other gaps to get filled. Because those first.
So, and I'm just asking, so if we've got this room here. And I would expect, if we built this room, I would expect all the gaps consistent. That'd be my expectations when building this room. Okay, so am I assuming that prior to filling these gaps, that line there would be fine, that one there would have a gap in it, that one there would be fine, that one over there would have a gap in it?
They'd have varying degrees of gap, anywhere between a quarter and 3/8.
So this is to pay to make it all filled in.
Uniform.
Yes.
So my expectation when I built a room such as this, that they would all be uniform.
Within the quarter to 3, within a spec
Yeah,
tolerance.
there's tolerances that are built within the manufacturing standards for these panels. And that is the standard, it's no more than a quarter inch.
And it was outside that?
The ones that were fixed that you're not paying for were outside of that.
So I think the fundamental,
Basically, as you just described, John, you would approve of the gap, of the ones that wouldn't have a gap, the ones would be unacceptable.
Say that again?
That was in the same order of the ceilings at the wastewater treatment plant. As you just explained, you said there would be, say those two gaps were fine, and then there was a gap over here that was unacceptable, there's a gap over there that's unacceptable to your eye. That's basically the explanation of the ceiling.
So I guess my expectation, novice would be, everything would look consistent. It does now, but
It was made to look consistent,
It does look consistent now.
doesn't show.
the ones that were repaired, were they out of spec, Eldon?
we're not paying for, we're
Yeah,
on
so-
spec.
The ones that were out of spec, you're not.
Okay, so I think the debate here is the remediation. Once there were any seams that were out of spec, should the remediation be to just fill the ones that are out of spec, or should the remediation be to caulk all the joints? I think that's what I'm hearing here. And there may be differences of opinion on that.
Joints already caulked or?
They're already done.
It's done.
And they took it upon themselves to fix the ones that they knew they needed to, and then made it all look.
There's authorization given.
Yeah.
So maybe we should let that go and look at all that $12,002 for over excavation.
That's soil stabilization, Karen, that's something that can't be.
So we didn't have this is that much more than we estimated?
Was there an overrun estimated for soil stabilization, Eldon?
There's, no, I mean, the only, there wasn't a line item specifically addressing soil stabilization. There was items in there to address potential over excavation of certain structures, but not in general.
Jumping back to the seams, where was approval? Who gave that to do all of them, make it consistent?
Where was the approval? We had some email traffic going back and forth, and everything came through as approved before getting all of those calls.
But this same similar conversation took place prior.
Yeah, this conversation is taking place about 3 or 4 times between different members of the.
I don't know who made the approval, but expect that because it needs to, it's a new building. It needs to look nice, you know? But I just don't approve just because things are not done right or out of spec, that we should have to pay to make everything look the same way as what the stuff was not in spec for. To me, it should be on the contractor to say, yeah, we'll just do it. Needs to look nice. At the same time, they could have rejected them panels. Happens all the time. Panels get rejected because they're screwed up. It's concrete.
I'm sure they had to weigh that though against the world we're in of how quick things are turned around today though, right? You know? How good have they been to work with? Pretty good.
They've been excellent to work with, you get a great contractor. We're a really low rate in terms of actual change orders.
My only point, and I hear where you guys are coming from, is it worth the $2,000 discussion? Right?
I'm the guy that likes change orders, remember? Doug is under obligation to contest.
And that's good, but I just, you know what I'm saying, right? I mean, in the grand scheme of things, is it with everything going as well as it is it worth pushing back or not? We'll throw that out.
You saying the fact that we were able to get everything done in the last year and a half is something.
Yeah, there's something to be said about that, right?
Understand that.
And the fact that this is finished, right, it's already done, so, yeah, there were.
And we knew it didn't cost us much.
And maybe that's a discussion point of, you know, they accepted this, but
but they did
ideally,
their best.
you know, I mean, there's give and take, right? I guess that's all I'm saying on a deal like that.
Not hearing any unanswered questions. We still have an action in front of us.
I'll make a motion to approve the total change order number 4 of $17,703.41.
Second.
Doug, no.
Karen,
Karen, what did you say? I'm sorry.
Thank you.
John,
Jerry,
Mike, aye.
motion carries with 4. Eldon, thank you very much.
Thank you, guys. Have a good night.
Thank you too.
Eldon for sharing.
Is there gonna be a change order affiliated with the steps that are going in the mechanics room where the UV lighting is and the gate that's getting built?
There's a cost proposal on it.
Where did this direction come from?
The cost proposal request. It came from the owner or from the contractor asking me to put together, ask them to put together a cost proposal. Just he wanted some steps on there.
I made the comment that it should have been designed. It was a hazard, the way it was designed.
You don't want the ladder. Steve told me he wanted a ladder and the contractor told me a ladder.
I said it should have been designed that way.
You know,
I never gave the approval
to.
wasn't even a cost
proposal. Do you want the cost proposal?
I'd like to see the cost proposal.
Okay. That's what's on its way. It's not a change order, it's a cost proposal.
But it's to my understanding that the steps and the platforms get made already.
No.
Okay. That's why I was questioning on.
Yeah, no, they had no approval for me. to Purchase anything.
Okay.
Anything else for Eldon? Eldon, thank you for sharing the hot seat tonight.
All right, thank you.
Next up then is the contract payment number 3 for the Highway 20 lift station and Forts Main project. Change order?
So this is,
It's been a long night.
estimates for the highway lift station project. Majority of this application is for stored materials at the contractor shop. I received invoices and photo evidence as well as proof of insurance for everything which meets the contractual obligations that they pay for that. And that would be pumps, valving, some structures, instrumentation.
So this payment due this time is the $116,209.23. And once again, Director Ludwig?
Yes.
Doug? Yes. Do we need a motion in a second?
Yes.
I'll make a motion to approve contract payment number 3, Highway 20 lift station Force Main. I'll second that. Doug, aye.
And
John, aye.
Mike,
Motion carries with 5.
Thank you.
Thank you,
Thank
Jacob.
you.
thank you. Thanks for hanging.
Could have talked earlier.
Okay. I will now take us back up to 6A and the monthly report. from Public Works, Director Levin.
I guess to start off, are there any questions on anything on the monthly report?
Just the Cox Springs Road is really nice, but anyway.
Good.
That
A lot of compliments.
yeah, they did it's really nice team, so thank you.
So I guess the only thing other I have to add, I'm sure most of you have noticed, the lift station project has started. It's underway. They have basically the hole dug and shored for where the main lift station actually goes. It's actually pretty interesting and pretty mind-boggling, you know, watching them. Just to experience that and watch them dig that hole, because I mean, we're looking at right now at 25 feet, water pouring in, and the type of shoring they got, I'm actually pretty impressed, considering.
So do we need to tour that before we tour the wastewater treatment facility?
If you're gonna do that, you better do it tomorrow. There might be a structure set in there by Friday. But yeah, I mean, it's actually pretty interesting. They have their mini hose set down in the actual hole inside the box, the short area, to do the excavating around the edges that they can't get with the big one. And it's done.
So we can go,
You guys are impressed, with the exception of the operator.
they actually lowered a mini X down the hole.
Yeah.
That's fun.
That's pretty cool.
I won't ask if the operator was in it.
I wasn't there to experience that.
Okay.
Probably good. It's the Enterprise Drive project is started today, so that is now underway as well. So,
Enterprise Drive, you said? What did you say?
Enterprise Drive project, sewer project,
Yeah.
Gravity Park.
Okay. Good. We've also got Vulcans is coming through for Comelec, Royal Oaks right now too.
Correct.
That going well?
It appears to be going well, yes, to my knowledge.
Okay.
Yep.
Notice they've been pretty diligent about cleaning up after themselves.
They're pretty good in the fact that their local contractor is pretty peasy with me, I guess. You know, we just had one simple little, can't necessarily say unhappy resident over here, but he called me numerous times and asked politely to have them come back and do some seeding, and Vulcans took the initiative, actually sod the area that they disturbed, so. Nice. Good.
Thank you. Any questions for Dean?
Thanks, Dean.
All right, thank you very much. Let's get back on track. We've got, if I go back to our original order, we'll go to item 4A, Community Center, and our update from Director Bauer.
Do you guys have any questions on my stuff that I have there?
We give you an ETA on the net?
They just said they were completely patched for the foreseeable future. So, but the good part is what I got from MSA was the company that this is what they do for a living. And that they usually post free with the idea that they will get your business done. So I think it's gonna be the right direction to take once I can actually set up said meeting to start the ball rolling to kind of see what we can get.
Looks like we're slowly getting caught back up to the memberships.
For around the same.
What's that?
Around the same.
I mean, it's better than
We're trying to monitor. Not that jump yet.
next couple months will probably take off.
That's, yeah, we did, my board meeting last week, or last month, we did talk about membership prices and that kind of stuff. We had started a schedule where we raise prices every other year. January was supposed to be the year, it's done again.
January 21?
No, 22. And so we did decide against that this go around, just kind of maintain for another, at least a year to kind of see where we're at and go from there. So yeah, we're gonna maintain it. Hopefully get some loose
How are we doing with the talk? I know we talked about it, talked with the boards, they were, for the most part, in support of it.
Yeah, so I guess, what was your question? I'm sorry, I heard part of it.
About changing the board to a committee or.
Yeah, so I think, so I had on the update last week or last month that, I was looking for a board member, because Ann Dawson actually stepped down. She's now an employee, so she's kind of a change of roles, if you will. But I haven't actually put it out there, for an additional board member yet, because I was kind of hoping to kind of have direction in terms of, I don't want to say direction, that's not the right word, but as far as like, is this going to be more centered on, we talked about parks, is it going to be, just PCC? Is it, I want to get someone who is going to be passionate about what the direction the board is moving forward in, if that makes sense. So I haven't done that for that reason. I think the last conversations I've had was more Park and Rec board was kind of I think the direction we wanted to see, but we haven't had a lot of discussions on it.
I just don't want to get in the same boat when Whitney was here,
Yep.
You had a board and they tell you one thing, she'd tell you something else, we'd tell you something.
Yep. And I would say that has already definitely changed. Like it's definitely
The awkwardness.
It's definitely like, I would say geared more towards the direction of here and then more of them input as far as this is, I think, the best but final say has been, and they've accepted that and on board with that.
Do they help implement? They would help implement anything.
More of an advisory board.
Yeah, exactly.
Is that anything we have to do officially in any type of documents or paperwork that we have within the? I was thinking Whitney said yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, we talked about that a couple of months here. I think I got you kind of a draft, some kind of standard park board language, and the real question is what the PCC board, and my understanding is some of them are very much of mine. We want to be involved in the building of the property. We don't want to be involved in park and recreation. But that's a unique situation for Peosta because of the way this building was donated to the city with kind of that board put in place to be sure it functioned the way it was desired to be functioned by the donor, I think. Park and Rec board is very good for a Park and Rec department on a couple fronts. One, it provides you kind of a group of volunteers to help with some things. It gives you a support system. It's an advisory board. So you don't get in trouble with that who do I answer to thing, because they are truly an advisory board and think to bounce things off to get help with things, et cetera. So there's still, that wouldn't interfere with the relationship between the Park and Rec director, who typically will answer to the city administrator indirectly to the council.
We just had Kelly Oaks Park Board, Keep Eye Beautiful Board that was out there that has been, I don't know when we.
That was part of the conversation. Is there, is it kind of like a combination of the two? Is it, what happened with that? Are they still meeting? Because I don't believe
No.
they are.
Is that something that maybe we should get both of those committees or boards in the same room and talk out and?
As long as we know what our game plan is going in, I think that would be the biggest question is, parks, future parks, what does that look like? Do we have those answers? Does that help answer that question, or is that not?
Who has to be in the room to help have that conversation?
I think it's led by your guys' vision, is it not? As far as what it looks like for, let's say, Water's Edge happens, who's taking, who's doing maintenance, who's doing programming, who's doing whatever, what does that look like? I think is part of the bigger discussion. Same thing with Kelly Oaks, as far as right now, it is pretty much that volunteer board and Dean doing maintenance, but there's been,
The Planning and Zoning Commission is under the domain of the city administrator, right? Is there any reason that the Parks and Rec board would also not be under or is it in fact under the domain of the city administrator as well?
I feel like the ones that I've been a part of in the past have been under the Park Rec Director.
I agree.
Okay, which in turn you.
Or whatever.
Yeah, you
it's determined would be.
are then reporting to the city administrator.
Yes.
Okay. So they're in specifically your domain. Thank you for the clarification.
One thing with your PCC board is just as you're thinking about adding the members, if you add members who were more interested in the park and rec side. And how many members on your board?
5 right now.
5. You know, maybe you think of keeping that board, but expanding it to 7 and kind of breaking it into 2, have 2 committees on that board. Where one is kind of focused on the building and the property and the other is maybe more recreation. One thing that the benefit of that is that's one board to deal with still instead of 2.
Yep.
One meeting instead of 2. It may be then, once you get that going, some of the people who are only really interested in the building think, well, that stuff's kind of interesting too. You know, and it starts to eventually meld more into one group. And as members get off, maybe you add new members who have that mutual interest.
So maybe Stacy, you put together a plan and come to us saying, okay, this is what I see for my boards. I see whatever these 4 people, as the park, as the, whatever you want to call it, the rec. Right, and then you come back to us with a plan and
Get the 2 groups together and make them meld. I mean, not everybody's gonna wanna work from the Kelly Oaks Park. I'm not gonna be on that park. And I'm on it now, you know what I mean? So
Absolutely.
you might get your people that you're looking for.
I missed the verb you used there. Get the 2 together and what? No, merge them.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you. I thought it was going the same way. That's been a lingering, I think, concern along is that we've had historically 2 different entities. Just based on geography. This is probably a really good opportunity to bring that all together.
I think it'd be good to re-engage them. That's what
Absolutely.
they did a lot of work that's unfortunately kind of just stalled, right? So I think if we could kind
Well,
of
and that would be a question.
reinvigorate that too.
Direction, I bring them in. But where does their input go? Like, I
Right,
know, like,
right.
you know, do you know what I'm saying?
I do.
Uh,
I do.
But would it not go to the board as a whole? Maybe there's a Kelly Oaks committee, there's a,
I think it would be a parks committee and.
Or do they become the Parks Committee?
okay, and then the Parks Committee is responsible for all
Right.
parks.
So I think that's, but I mean, I guess maybe have Stacy come up with a.
Yeah, sorry,
Yeah,
You know, what you envision.
sorry. Well said, John.
With the assumption that I am taking on parks as all encompassed with public works, helping with maintenance, I guess is that vision.
Correct.
Sorry.
I think so.
I mean,
I think so, yeah.
Short term, I think short term, yeah.
Yeah.
Short term, just
I think what we're asking, John put it pretty well there, is for you to come back with a proposal.
No, that's perfect. That's.
And if there's some ambiguity to be cleared up about, roles and responsibilities between Parks and Rec versus Public Works, the 2 of you could work together on that proposal.
Maybe a short term, long term goals, that type of stuff.
I think what we're hearing is there's ambiguity that we all want to get rid of.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, yeah.
We're probably the worst people to define what that answer is. One other, I don't know, Stacy, if this is a reasonable request. If this involves a lot of extra work, I won't ask for it. But it may be helpful as we go forward to get visibility to how many events or how many requests that you have to decline because we don't have space.
Okay. One of the things I've been semi-working on, meaning to work on, is kind of both, so not just events that we have to say no to, but also events, so you guys have a clear picture of how much truth within the facility. So I need to work on that. I would say one of the columns I will most likely will be ones that we have to turn away because we are booked. So yeah, I can do that.
Thank you.
And meaning to do that, just haven't got to it.
We're going to have decisions in the future where that data may be helpful.
Absolutely.
Did you get the fences fixed at the field?
Nope.
Are you gonna, they saying this year?
I don't even know if it's worth it this year, still.
yes.
That's a yes. That was a deed yes.
And a little smirk.
Okay, sorry. Maybe I should have let that one lie too, but anyway, sorry, Dean.
No, I mean, my theory is you don't want to wait till spring because then you're gonna be tearing it up. At least things get tore up now.
Have something to spell out.
Yeah, well said.
Anything else from you, Stacy?
Just as a general, for all those today's judges, et cetera, thank you. Appreciate it.
His body's not built for hot.
As always, he's did a great job.
Yes, it was a lot of compliments.
Absolutely. Anything else for Stacy from council? I did it in the newsletter, but two of you are here specifically say, I know Peosta Days takes a tremendous amount of work. It's not a year-long thing, but there's a tremendous amount of work around that event. So there's 5 people that emerged as being primary leaders of that. Stefan, Dean Gasper, Stacy Bauer, and Mike Ackerman. Thank you too for your leadership role in that. All right, Chief Comer, would you like some time to talk?
Sure.
All right, we'll do police department now.
You guys have my reports in front of you. I just want to touch on, let's just say Peosta Days events, PD assisted Peosta Days with the 5K run, the kids low run held on August 26th. The parade is on the 28th. We had no issues or very little issues with both the run or the parade. I'd say the biggest issue with the run was it rained and it rained hard. That's the only issue. Other than that, it went well. Both events went well. The parade, traffic control, that even events at nighttime, everybody did a good job of that. So I just wanted to say good job on that one.
I want to say it was really neat. It was really neat to see the engagement of both guys and yourself there, just walking through, participating in the Eaton contest.
Yeah, it really
whatever it was.
that community policing.
I really had to I really had to twist
They're
them
good
up.
sports usually.
Yeah, it was.
Oh, you're talking the food contest?
It's just interacting. I like there's just.
I'll do other things.
It's good to see them interacting and being part of it.
The next thing I had is we did a step through August 20th and September 6th. I didn't have time to get the numbers together until today, and I just didn't get it in there, but I'll put it on the next monthly report. Cops grant. I advise you guys that I didn't hear any news. Well, we did receive an email on that. It said, it was a long email, but the point I'm getting across is they said we expect some cops office grants will be awarded after September 30th. We do not anticipate making awards later than December 31st, 2021. So you get that. I mean, it is what it is. We might hear by September 31st. It might take until December 31st. We're not sure yet. September 31st is when.
30th.
30th, I'm sorry, 30th. Yep.
That was a leap year.
Enough with the term.
For the new car, I put in here that there was no time frame or anything. I talked to him yesterday, I believe it was, or a couple days ago. I had this already out, but again, Kentucky Motors was saying basically they're waiting for the microchips in the vehicle, possibly even headliners. You know, it's a pretty big common thing. They're shutting down plants because they don't have the chips. So I asked, give me some kind of time frame if you can. And he said, I can't really give you a time frame, but expect possibly another 3 to 4 months. And that's a complete yes at this point. They don't know. That's what he told me to expect.
I learned that BMW is still making cars.
What's that?
BMW is still producing.
I'm sure.
Go get it, money.
No,
That'd go over well.
I had a Ford dealer tell me 3 to 4 months over.
Yep. So it's pretty common, I think, for like all facilities. All right. Back to school, the kids went back to school August 23rd. We had a couple issues with road closures on Cox Springs Road. Us as a PD, we did traffic control of that, and everything went according to plan, I guess, or well with that. So otherwise, we do monitor morning pickup and afternoon pickup still and make sure there's no issues there. The other thing was radar speed signs. I put the averages of the speed signs in my report, and I'm happy to say that they're all right at the average or below the average at most of the signs. The one sign we don't have calculated yet was the Cox Springs sign that just got put up. We had to reset that, and I'll put that in the next one. I just kind of want to keep you guys in the loop of how that's going. So I believe they're doing a good job. They're working, you know what I mean?
You're telling us the speed as they exit the zone?
Yeah, so what it does is it calculates from per season, and that's what it blinks every time it blinks. That's when it gives you a certain speed, all that averages out, you know, you're talking this is a 2-month average, you know, the one right by Peosta Elementary is 24.8 miles. The speed limit is 25 through there, but once it hits that sign, it goes to 20, but in our statistics, it shows the speeds going down from there also. And again, that's through all of them. And I think it is working. And people are doing a very good job with it for the most part. Now, don't get me wrong, there are other calculated speeds at 35, 40, you know, that just, there's some speeders that come once in a while through there, but the average speed is right at the speed limit.
With the reconstruction of Cox Springs Road, are you gonna put a few more patrols on there for speeders?
Absolutely.
Looks like a track.
Yeah, you know, in the last conversation we had about the UTV conversation last month, you asked if there was any roads that were above 25. Cox Springs actually is in city limits, which that is a 35-mile-per-hour zone. I forgot about that. That is in city limits. If you remember or recall that conversation. That's all I got.
Cox Springs was 35.
Excuse me?
You said Cox Springs was 30?
That's correct. Until it's 20-mile-per-hour zone where the school is.
And Thunder Hills is?
Thunder Hills is not our jurisdiction.
Sounds like it too.
Yep. We're adjacent to it, but we don't have.
Correct.
Thank you. Anything else for Chief Comer?
Is there a speed limit posted on the frontage road that goes from Cox Springs to Thunder Hills?
Juliana?
Juliana?
Oh, no, the actual.
No, the actual frontage.
Thunder Valley.
Oh, Thunder Valley, the new road.
Yeah.
In front of like the business.
Front of the.
Not yet, because it's construction yet.
Okay.
Yeah, that's why there's no actual business that's up and operating yet. There's supposed to be stop signs.
No walkthrough or anything with the contractor yet.
Supposed to be stop signs put up. There's supposed to be road signs, you know, the names of the roads still has to be put up yet.
Okay, thanks.
We do say in our ordinances, speed limit is 25 unless otherwise posted.
Yes, and Annette and I are working on redoing the ordinances, getting them up to par, and that was one thing we were. We're getting there.
Little by little. All right, anything else for PD? Thank you very much, Chief. All right, just double, everything's checked off thus far. We're back in order, so we're down to development, 7A. Seven A gives us a resolution of a preliminary plat of Royal Oaks East, 7th edition in the city of Peosta. So this is the land behind the duplexes on Peosta Street and south of the funeral home, right?
Correct.
We've got a map and a resolution. If I may, I'd like to ask a question. It's a procedural question. When we have when we're looking for approval of preliminary plans, do these by process go through P and Z first?
Yes, and it did back in April, I think.
Okay. And then as a result of that, as we did with some of the other ordinances tonight, if it comes to us, then it's implied that it's been approved by them.
Correct, yes.
Okay, thank you. Go ahead, Jerry. Thanks for that.
I'll make a motion.
I'll second.
Doug, aye.
Can I?
John, I.
Jerry, aye.
Mike, aye.
Motion carries with 5. Next up is the plans and specifications for Royal Oak East, 7th edition.
Dean, did you see anything on here that jumped out at you?
No, I did not.
I'm curious what, you know what the intention is for the outlot?
Stormwater.
Stormwater are you talking about?
Stormwater retention.
Oh,
It has a
okay.
retention area.
Thank you. I was wondering what that was for. That answers it.
I'll make a motion.
A second. Aye.
Karen, I.
Tonight.
Jerry, aye.
Okay.
Motion carries with 5. And then lastly, under development, we've got a resolution of Royal Oaks East, 7th edition.
Make the motion to approve the final plat, Royal Oak 7th edition.
I'll second.
Doug, aye.
Karen, I.
John, aye.
Jerry, aye.
Mike, aye.
Motion carries with 5. Moving on to administration, we have an ordinance amending chapter 14, operation of all-terrain vehicles. So there's some language here that Chief Cover, it sounds like you were in. Would you like to give this just a short?
Sure, we talked about at the last meeting that we wanted to open up UTVs on the city streets and change the time. We're looking at the time was, it was 5 a.m. to sunset.
That's consistent with Dubuque County, right?
With, consistent with Dubuque County, correct. We're gonna open up all the roads instead of having any roads blocked during a certain time. It's up to you guys for the second reading.
That was the second read, right?
Yeah.
Thank you.
I make the motion to approve the second reading. I'll second. Doug, aye.
Karen, I.
John, aye.
Jerry, aye.
Mike, aye.
Motion carries with 5.
Make the motion to waive the third reading. Second. Doug, aye.
Karen, I.
John, aye.
Jerry, aye.
Mike, aye.
Motion carries with 5.
So with that being said, if you don't mind me, what I'll do is I'll put something together on Facebook to get that out to the people tomorrow so they know that this is now completely passed.
Well, after they adopt it.
After it's adopted, yeah.
One more.
Oh, we didn't adopt it.
Yes, we need one more motion.
Oh,
I'll make the motion to adopt it.
I'll second.
Doug, aye.
Karen, I.
John, aye.
Jerry, aye.
Mike, aye.
There you go.
There we
So
go.
now I will put some on Facebook and get it out to the public so they have knowledge. I'll also get a hold of the ATV Alliance group, but so they have knowledge of it also.
Thank you very much, Chief.
So I'll see you on Friday.
Sure.
All right. Moving then to item 8B, Mayor Proclamation of Rail Safety Week. So whereas 1,889 railroad crossing collisions resulted in 768 personal injuries and were responsible for fatalities in the United States. And 1,088 trespassing incidents have occurred in the United States, 532 pedestrians being killed and another 556 injured while trespassing on railroad property rights of way during 2020. And whereas educating and informing the public about rail safety, reminding the public that railroad right-of-ways are private property, enhancing public awareness of the dangers associated with highway rail grade crossings, ensuring pedestrians and motorists are looking and listening while near railways, and obeying established traffic laws will reduce the number of fatalities and injuries. And whereas the International Association of Chiefs of Police, National Operation Lifesaver, United States Department of Transportation, and all local, state, county, and railroad law enforcement officers, first responders, and railroad corporations commit to partnering together in an effort to educate at a national level all the aspects of railroad safety to enforce applicable laws in support of National Rail Safety Week. Therefore, I, James Merton, Mayor, do hereby attest my full support proclaiming September 20th to September 26th, 2021 as National Rail Safety Week, and I encourage all citizens to recognize the importance of rail safety education. And that proclamation, a copy of that will be sent to CN as well, as they were spearhead behind the National Rail Safety Week promotion. So that concludes the all of the agenda items other than our closing citizen comment.
Actually, I had another, that I wanted to talk about. Tomorrow, we have a meeting for Catfish Creek and Kelly Oaks, whether or not they're gonna actually fund that project is on the agenda for action items, so find out whether or not they're gonna wanna do anything with the weiring. Kelly Oaks tomorrow.
What time's that meeting?
5 o'clock. 5 o'clock, so, and, we should be with New York. I'll let you know.
So on that note, I do have boomerang hauling spoils out to Kelly Oak to start on the ditch on Mila. So we're gonna try to reconstruct that as much as possible ourselves. Kind of got tired of waiting.
No, I hear you. That's why it's an action items. We'll see what, we're low on funding anyway for that.
I mean, we can direct all that funding if we get any.
Since this group actually did get back together to start doing other projects over there as well, get that part.
Yep.
Anything you need from the council to support?
No, Jake Deeper from MSA was at the last meeting over there. He did a great job. It was a long meeting. That's a nice tornadoes over there around the area.
Nice.
He went to a track meet. That's all I got.
How long have you been on that particular group, committee, council, whatever it is?
I took over when Pat, had his issue. So, I mean,
3 years.
2019.
Years?
all questions. Yeah, 3.
Thank you for doing that.
That's no problem. It's a good group.
All right. Anything else, Mr. Herman?
Last thing, Bert stepped out, but he earlier made a comment about not liking the way the recommendation or the minutes of the P and Z order. Those haven't really been approved yet, because they get written after the meeting, but they go back to the P and Z to be approved at their next meeting. I would suggest in light of all the discussion with particularly PUD and the zoning and everything, or look at those pretty close to be sure they read the way you want them to. Maybe they do already. So, and that's true of the council. It's, a lot of times it's easy not to look hard at the minutes and just assume they say everything. There are specific things that were in a meeting that are maybe a little more, I use the word controversial loosely, but that you want to be sure are said right. It's important to look at those because the person taking the minutes, it's hard to catch everything. And to phrase it exactly how you may want it phrased or think it should be. And it is also important, like I said earlier, if any of you ever want something specifically said in the minutes, you have the right to say, I want a record that I said this. So 2 cents on that, but I just think for the fact that there was some suggestion that there was some inconsistencies with what the P and Z motion was based upon in comparison to what you read, that should be at least looked at by the P and Z and clarified.
Thank you. Any other items before I ask for public comment? I see we have one member of the public still online. Zach, did you care to address the council for anything?
Nothing directly. I just wanted to thank everybody and was able to listen in tonight. Taking care of Benjamin here at home, it worked out a little bit easier, but definitely a really good conversation and interesting to listen to the viewpoints on things. Just appreciate listening in. Thank you.
Thanks. And is Peosta 2021 us or somebody else? Okay. Is there any other comments from the public, either in the room or online? Okay. Hearing none, I'll take a motion to adjourn.
I'll make a motion to adjourn.
Oh.
No, I wanted to adjourn.
Oh. The motion gotta come from you. Okay, so please, who said the motion? I did. Second?
Okay.
Then I.
Meeting's adjourned.